Wednesday, January 8th, 2019 session of the Portland City Council. We're in session. Carla, please call the roll.
Fritz.
Here.
Fish. Hardesty.
Here.
Udaly.
Here.
Wheeler.
Here. So before we begin, this is our first meeting, our first regularly scheduled Wednesday meeting of the Portland City Council without our colleague Commissioner Fish. I'd like to start off by asking us to observe a moment of silence, and then we're going to do a few other things. But could we please start with a moment of silence to reflect on the life of Commissioner Nick Fish? Thank you. Today is the day that we reassign the responsibility of the council presidency. And today would ordinarily be the day that we would assign the council presidency to Commissioner Nick Fish, because he was next in the rotation. Before designating Commissioner Hardesty to be the council president, I'd like to nominate Commissioner Fish as the council president one last time.
Retroactive to January 1st of 2020, second.
We have a motion and we have a second. You'll notice that while Commissioner Fish isn't here today, we are going to place the council presidency badge at his desk in a moment. This is just one way that we can express our deep appreciation and gratitude for Commissioner Fish. There will be other opportunities. There will be other celebrations of life. And as the family publicizes those events, we'll make sure that everybody is aware of it, both the City Hall family as well as the public at large. So we have a motion, we have a second. Carla, please call the roll.
Fritz.
So as a middle child myself, I knew that Commissioner Fish would not like to be skipped. And so I suggested this to the mayor yesterday, that we honor him by making him council president. I served with Nick for 11 years and knew him for almost 12 really well, because he was running for the special election when I was running in 2008. And it's still hard to put into words what a great loss it is to the city and to his family, to his staff, to me personally, and to everybody who knew him. And so I would encourage everybody to read his statement issued in December of last year, because he had so many accomplishments, it's hard to even begin to start of which ones to pick out. I do honor his staff, who have been doing an amazing job. You know, Nick was really sick for 2 years, and most of the time you wouldn't know it, that he was in council a lot. I think if you looked at the record for last year, he was one of the most present. He was there when we referred the Water Bureau's ballot measures to the ballot in June. He was the third vote for approving the contract to do the filtration plant. Every bureau you ever have, you become really attached to it, and you are always looking after it. And so Nick was certainly a good partner at being in charge of environmental services. He did an amazing task in restoring public trust in the utilities during Mayor Hales's administration. I know we're all feeling for Patricia and Maria and Chapin, and that was another thing that Nick did really well, was he managed to balance home life and work life. And I thank Maria and Chapin and Patricia for letting us have so much of Nick. People don't realize that when you're on the council, you're just on all the time. You go to the grocery store at 10 to 11 at night trying to get your family a jug of milk, and somebody's right there telling you, could you please do something about homelessness? Like, thank you for bringing that to my attention. And Nick not only did that, but he went out of his way to meet with people and make sure that they knew that he was listening. And so, aided by amazing staff in his office. So I'm very honoured to move the plaque for President of the Council to Commissioner Nick Fish. Aye.
Hardesty.
I've served with Nick Fish on the council the least amount of time, but I have known and fought with and laughed with Nick Fish for many years. I don't know how many people remember that Nick really wanted to serve the city of Portland on the city council to the point where he ran 3 times before he actually was elected. To me, that's tenacity. Most people, they get bruised in an election and they're like, I'm never doing that again. So not only did he persevere, but he became an incredible statesman. I battled in this chamber with him over the years, as I've battled with everybody that has served in this chamber at one time or another, but always with respect, always with humor, always with compassion. I'm going to miss Nick. I will say that when I was running for this seat, Nick was running for re-election. And there were many days that he was sitting next to me, and I would go, you need to go home. Why are you here? Sometimes he sent surrogates, but most of the time he showed up. And I told him, I said, people will forgive you for not being here. But it was important for him, wanting to be reelected, that he showed up in the public forums. And so I have a lot of respect, again, for the tenacity of Nick Fish. I will miss him, and I vote aye.
Daly.
I think I'm the crier on the council.
Think you're the choir?
I'm the crier.
Oh, the crier. I was crying, just couldn't tell.
So I'm really unprepared to say all the things that I have to say about Commissioner Fish. Which is fitting because I was also really unprepared for his passage. I spent winter break in the hospital with my son, sick myself, so I couldn't get a final visit in with Nick. I was still hoping against hope that he would be coming back to us, or that he would finally take the break that we all encouraged him to take to focus on himself. He carried himself with such strength and dignity through this illness that I don't think even people quite close to him realized how dire his condition was. I had written a tribute to Nick on Thursday in the lobby of the hospital. It just flowed out of me and onto the page, and as I was putting the finishing touches on it, I lost the file. I was frustrated and exhausted, and I couldn't conjure it back up. And a few hours later, I learned of his death. I've really been unable to put words to my thoughts and feelings since then, so I'm going to tell one of my favorite Nick stories and save the rest for later. Oh, gosh, you guys, I'm sorry. I just cannot get this frog out of my throat. I walked into these chambers to take my seat for the first time 3 years ago, almost to the day. I had no idea what to expect as a political outsider and newcomer. 3 of my 4 colleagues had endorsed my opponent. No offense, anybody, it's just the reality. And there's very little onboarding for new commissioners, as I keep complaining about to Tom Reinhardt. I want that to change. Nick was the first to greet me. He said, "Welcome and congratulations, Commissioner Daly. You're the president of the council." with a big smile. I thought he was hazing me, but it was in fact true. By some odd council rule, the newcomer to the council became president on the first day and was to serve in the mayor's stead in his absence. That moment marked the beginning of a warm, friendly, and really supportive relationship, which never wavered through all the ups and downs of our time on council together. I think a lot about the impact of the work we do now on future generations, about how decades from now, when we are largely forgotten, our invisible fingerprints will still be left all over the city. Commissioner Fish made some of his finest marks in affordable housing, environmental services, parks, and the cleanup and restoration of our waterways. But my personal debt of gratitude to Nick is that he welcomed me in. And insisted I take my place. Not as an outsider, but as an integral part of something much bigger and more important than ourselves or our differences. It was an honor to serve on this council with him. He brought such valuable knowledge and history, equanimity, humor, civility, and an endless willingness to find the reasonable and amicable compromise as our unofficial mediator and middle child of the council. My love and gratitude and sympathy go out to his family, friends, and staff. He will be missed dearly. Bye.
Wheeler?
I really appreciate the words of my colleagues, and they speak for me as well. It was an honor to have known Nick Fish and to have served with him. Before I served with him, he was also a friend. And I still remember the first time I met him. It was purely coincidence. And life was different back then for both of us. The very first evening that we went out together, he introduced me to some people who are still some of my best and closest allies. And he never stopped. From that very first time that I met him, we continued to enjoy that kind of a relationship. He was a great connector. He was loved by many, many people in this community. And I came to appreciate very quickly that he was a highly intelligent, very thoughtful individual. And he also had a great sense of humor, and I don't want to lose sight of that. That was one of the things I really loved about him, was he had an understated but really thoughtful and intelligent sense of humor, and I'll miss that about him. I want to note that he was a politician's politician, and I mean that in a positive sense. I know the word politician has become sort of a dirty word. It's become something of a jab. But Nick really embraced the good things in what a politician should be. He did the hard work. He would be in the community. He would go to the rubber chicken dinners. He would meet with constituents, whether they were supportive of what he was doing or whether they were angry with him. And he embraced it all. He didn't do it because he had to. He did it because he loved doing it. It was in his DNA. And I often wondered over the years why Nick chose to be here, because I'm going to tell you something. Nick could have done anything. He could have gone anywhere in elective office. He would have been right up there with the giants of the United States Senate. He could have followed in his forebearers' footsteps and been a fantastic Secretary of State. He was a statesman. He understood the importance of compromise in a time when people are bitterly divided. And the word compromise, unfortunately, has become something negative. But Nick made it something good. He understood that in order to make things work, in order to get what you need done, you have to compromise. You have to listen to other perspectives. You have to work with people who have different ideas. And that means you give something up in order to get something in exchange. And he was a master of the game. He was a master. And he could have been anything, but he chose to spend his life here. He chose to put the best that he had behind being a Portland City Commissioner. He did not aspire for higher office. He was not trying to seek a different career. He gave the best years of his life in that seat over there. And he did it because he loved it, and he loved the city, and he loved you. And it was genuine. And I was just proud to know him. You know, there's something I'm going to do to personally honor Nick. I was trying to think, what can I do? How do I reflect the good work that he has done? I've told my staff that one of the things I really liked about Nick was reliably every day coming into work, I would pass Cafe Umbria, and Nick would be there early in the morning meeting with a constituent every day. And sometimes I recognized the people he was with, sometimes I didn't, sometimes they were laughing, sometimes it looked like they were yelling. But he was out there and he was meeting people one-on-one. Nick, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that as a way that I can help take what I think was the best of what you offered here in this chamber and make it part of the way I do business going forward. That's what I'm going to do for you, Nick, to honor you. I want to also acknowledge the real pain, the real hurt, and the real healing that the Fish family is going to be going through. Patricia and Chapin and Maria. I don't think Patty would mind if I told you that she came into my office the other day and we sat, we had the chance to visit, and the first thing she did was extend her condolences to me. If that doesn't say something about the character of that family. The City Hall team is really hurting. Nick's entire staff, most of them are here in the room today. Sonia Szymanski is Chief of Staff. She's been working for quite some time with our staff to help make sure that this transition is a smooth one and a thoughtful one. And others from around the City Hall orbit are here in this chamber today because they wanted to come and they wanted to remember and recognize and reflect on and celebrate the life of Nick Fish. And I want to acknowledge all of you as well. Carla, you worked in this chamber for many years alongside Commissioner Fish, and I know you're hurting. And I want you to know we support you. So we're sad today, but I also want people to know that as the weeks and the months and the years roll on, we're going to look back on Nick Fish and his life, and we're going to smile a lot, and we're going to laugh a lot, and we're going to say we were all better, and this community was better for having had Nick Fish in it. We're fortunate to have known him. I vote aye.
Mayor, I have two other motions.
Commissioner Fritz.
I move that Commissioner Hardesty be President of the Council moving forward.
Second.
We have a motion, and we have a second to appoint Commissioner Hardesty President of the Council. Carla, please call the roll.
Fritz.
Aye.
Hardesty. Aye. Udaley.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The motion passes.
And then one last thing, as Commissioner Udaley mentioned, we've had a tradition that we just go down the rotation. I'm Commissioner seat number 1, Nick was 2, Commissioner Hardesty is 3, and Commissioner Udaley is 4. And it just happened that when Commissioner Udaley took office, the very first day she was President of the Council. She did a magnificent job, let's be very clear. And the President of the Council takes over for the Mayor when the Mayor is out of the country or if something happens. The President of the Council is on the Disaster Policy Council, and in the event of a major natural disaster or other attack or whatever, would be right there at the command center. So it would be better if a new council member had had some time on the council to learn how things work in the city before being thrust into that role. So and so with the rotation, Commissioner Udaley will be the president of the council starting in July of this year, and that would mean that Commissioner seat number 1 would be president of the council starting in January if we continue to do it that way. So Without knowing who my successor is going to be, I move that starting in January of 2021, the rotations start with the most senior member of the council and go down the row, so that every 2 years, the most senior member of the council would be in charge on January 1st. And that would mean that the least senior would have at least a year before they would be president of the council. So that's why I'm making that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Any further discussion on the motion? Please call the roll.
Fritz,
That's the longest speech I've ever made about being president of the council. Thank you, colleagues. Aye.
Hardesty. Aye. Udaly.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Makes a lot of sense. I vote aye. Motion carries. Do you have anything else?
No.
Okay, very good. So we'll move to the first item. First item is communications.
Read the rules.
If you could read. Oh, I'm sorry, Robert. I forgot the rules of order and decorum. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome to the Portland City Council. The City Council represents all Portlanders and meets to do the city's business. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during City Council meetings so everyone can feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. If it does not, you may be ruled out of order. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When you have 30 seconds left, a yellow light goes on. When your time is done, a red light goes on. If you are in the audience and would like to show your support for something that is said, please feel free to do a thumbs up. If you want to express that you do not support something, please feel free to do a thumbs down. Please remain seated in council chambers unless entering or exiting. If you are filming the proceedings, please do not use bright lights or disrupt the meeting. Disruptive conduct such as shouting or interrupting testimony or council deliberations will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being ejected for the remainder of the meeting. After being ejected, a person who fails to leave the meeting is subject to arrest for trespass. Thank you for helping your fellow Portlanders feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe.
Thank you, Robert. First up is communications. Carla, could you please read the first individual's name?
Item number 1, a request of Mary Ann Schwab to address council regarding parks and recreation plans for a parks district based on the children's levy.
Good morning, Marianne. Thank you for being here.
Notes.
Good morning.
3 minutes.
You always have
Notes.
good notes.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler, Commissioner Udaly, Fritz, and Hardesty. For the record, my name is Mary Ann Schwab. I've lived in the Sunnyside neighborhood since 1971. For many years, the City of Portland promised the Southeast residents that a park and recreation facilities would be made available to them at the old Washington High School site. Mr. Mayor, you may recall us bringing this issue to you during your first meeting in your first term. To date, all we have is that promise, and we are concerned that the threats of Prosper Portland investors may dash even that promise. I would ask the City Council to pass a resolution stating their intent to retain the Portland Parks and Recreation 4.5 acres open field located at Southeast Stark and 12th Avenue for recreational use in the future and not sell it or develop it for non-public purposes. Roughly 6 years ago, standing outside council chambers, Commissioner Nick Fish told me there was nothing he could do to fund the Inner Southeast Recreation Center until the Fix Our Parks bond expired in 2020. At the time of his passing, he was leading discussions on how to provide stable funding for parks' deferred maintenance and resources to close the service gaps, providing new parks in neighborhoods where needed. As the RIP density in the city increases, so does the need for open space and recreation facilities. Children have to have a place to play, to learn to swim, just to be children. Parents need a safe place to take their children and recreate with them. Let's retain the proper promise and possibilities by expressing the intent to save the old Washington High School 4.5 open acres for future generation in a resolution. I'm told today's city budget is $4 billion. The $100 million proposed intersonic construction would cost what, 5%, 1/2%? The figures are beyond my comprehension. I'm reminded that when attending the mayor's annual budget review some time ago, Martha Pellegrino, Office of Government Relations, stated her budget was like the flea on an elephant's tail, much like my $100 million to construct that site. Here is to peace and prosperity for all Portlanders in 2020. Respectfully, your constituent, your rebel-rouser, and I will return to every budget hearing to make sure that PDC, Prosper Portland, still retains the $985,000 unspent of the $5.4 million we paid for the 4.5 acres, the most beautiful dog park in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. Could I get a copy of your testimony?
You'll get them. I wanted your full attention and not
Got it.
flipper through all the attachments with it.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'd love to have a
My
copy.
next stop, City Archives. I
Excellent.
want this on a web where anyone in the city can track what's happened, because I'm at a jumping off point. I don't want to come down here and be assaulted ever again. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. We appreciate your being here. Carla, could you read the next three names together? It looks like they'd like to talk about the same item.
Item 2, request of Lee Cowlis to address council regarding an increase in Portland traffic fatalities in the first half of 2019. Number 3, request of Sue O'Neill to address council regarding an increase in Portland traffic fatalities in the first half of 2019. And number 4, request of Layla Cowlis to address council regarding an increase in Portland traffic fatalities in the first half of 2019.
Good morning. Thank you for
Good
being here.
morning.
And we'll give you a second to set up.
Thank you. While I'm doing that, Commissioner Fish did a number of projects with the people of Park Rose, and some of the civic groups and the school board have asked me to convey condolences and thanks to Commissioner Fish, his staff, and family.
Thank you. We appreciate it very much.
Give me just another second or two. We have toys, so you don't have to look at me. Ready? Yep. Did you get the big one? Oh, sure.
And again, 3 minutes each, name for the record, please.
I'm Lee Coles. I was born and raised in Park Rose. I've been a dentist in Park Rose for about 30 years. I was here last June to discuss some concerns and red flags concerning the Vision Zero project on 102nd. I'm back because I care deeply about Park Rose and Portland. Vision Zero was adopted by the Portland City Council in 2015 with two goals: to eliminate traffic fatalities and to eliminate serious injuries. You see on the chart here that since that time, we see the traffic fatalities and some other very interesting statistics. Unfortunately, 2019 was not a good year and had the most fatalities of any year since 1997. Regarding this extremely alarming trend, we're grateful. Commissioner Udaley made a great observation, and she said, "It's not just frustrating, it's deeply troubling. I've been asking myself, what are we doing wrong and what can we do faster?" So we're here today to try to give some help with that. ODOT and PBOT have provided stats on accidents since 2008. On 102nd Avenue, since 2005, there have been 3 fatalities. They all had one thing in common. They were all DUI. 102nd project was started in July of 2019. It will continue. I need to explain this chart just a little bit. The main changes are that the streets went from 4 lanes to 2 lanes. Bike lanes were added. These are crosswalks, and these are cement barriers. One of the key things is there will be no enforcement of any kind on this street for DUIs or for speeding, for anything. So I don't know.
I'm sorry, what? What are you talking about?
Moment, it's interrupting us 3 minutes.
There will be no.
We can stop the
yeah, we-
timer. and
Vision Zero and PBOT has made it clear that there will be no enforcement on 102nd.
That's simply not true. Carla, thank you.
That's what's online. That's what they've told us. Commissioner Daly, when I was here before, or Hardesty, when I was here before, you made it sound like you're familiar with this area on 102nd?
Yeah, I live there.
Okay, great. I hope it's okay to pick on you. Considering these changes, does it seem to you like there will be no more DUI potential drivers on 102nd? Have these changes done anything for that? Doesn't seem like it, does it?
During public comment, we're here to listen to you.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry about
thank
that.
you.
Won't do that again. PBOT and Vision Zero hasn't studied the cause of fatalities on 102nd, as they haven't done for most other streets in their projects, and therefore, the changes that they've made are not going to make any changes in that. There's still going to be the risk. In 2015, the council approved Vision Zero, even though Vision Zero at that time had no cities with completed projects, and they still don't. New York City has had Vision Zero for 5 years, yet their fatalities have not appreciably changed for the same reason. They don't look at the causes and identify them and then make solutions based upon those. The second item has to do with serious injuries. Since 2005, these are the serious injuries on 102nd. 2 DUI, 2 speeding, 4 turning onto or off of 102nd, 2 rear end, and 2 sideswipe. You notice that the last 8 are pretty much accidents of congestion. Studies nationwide conclude that the best method to decrease speeding and also DUI is enforcement. Again, according to what's online and according to what they've told us, there will be no enforcement on that. And they've said that even for the other streets, there will be no increased enforcement. So that is the end of my part. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Susan O'Neill. I'm also out here on behalf of Lee Coles and the 102nd Vision Zero project. Vision Zero has, again, the 2 goals stating that they're going to eliminate traffic fatalities and serious injuries. I'll discuss the Vision Zero about eliminating the serious injuries and the consequences of the Vision Zero project. Again, we'll use the Northeast 102nd project as an example. Northeast 102nd had 2 DUIs, 2 speedings, 2 turning onto or off of 102nd, 2 rear ends, 2 side swipes. Note that 2/3 of the serious injuries involved congestions. Studies nationwide concluded the best method to decrease speeding and also DUIs is enforcement. But again, PBOT has stated and made it clear that there's not going to be any increase or enforcement of this. Regarding accidents on the congestions accounting for 67% of the serious injuries on 102nd, in August of 2019, Commissioner Udaley stated, "We have a frustration born out of heavy congestion. We have a lack of enforcement, which makes people think they can take more risks on the road." ODOT crash analysis supervisors confirmed that increased congestion results in increased crashes. ODOT has not published a publication that states that our increased congestion leads to increased crashes. I have read many of the publications, he stated, and this is a general belief, and it is pretty firmly held in community safety. Again, here on 102nd, Commissioner Hardesty, if we may use you again, seeing the changes, knowing the causes of the serious accidents, and considering there is no plan to enforce it of any kind, do you feel secure with the serious injuries and accidents caused from the DUIs or the speeding, congestion? Have they been eliminated? I know you can't answer that right now. As with fatalities, the causes of serious injuries have not been addressed, so changes to stop them have not been made. Northeast 102nd pilot, the Vision Zero, was to be a 6-month pilot program. Yet they stated the pilot program was not going to be long enough to accurately measure the impact of the crashes. Instead, they changed it to be 2 things instead. It's going to project the impact of fatal and serious injury, crash risks, and the speeding along Northeast 102nd. Undesirable consequences to the project, such as increased congestion and traffic diverting to other streets. However, as we've just described, factors leading to fatal serious injuries, DUI, speeding, and congestions were not addressed at the project. PBOT surveyed project completion, did 560 surveys. 62% disapproved of the changes. Increased congestion led to increased crashes. Let's see, yet another update from Vision. Oh, sorry, I'm out of time, guys. I wanted to show you also the photo of 102nd on a regular basis.
Okay.
102nd, as you see on that street, on that over there, there is a concrete sidewalk. On a daily basis, that 3rd lane that has a concrete for people to safely go, they go down that street where there's no turn lane, and then they go against traffic on 102nd northbound. It's happened every day, at least 3 times a day. I know because I work out there and I watch it go by in the front.
Okay,
What's
thank
the
you.
intersection you're talking about?
102nd and Wygant.
Wygant, okay. Well,
They
thank-
did do enforcement, I'm sorry, but I want to let you know that they did a enforcement for 3 days with a traffic motorcycle. And I'm going to tell you, he probably made his year's salary with as many people as he pulled over in that 3-day period. Because of speeding, school zones. I mean, I'm watching it every day. I'm watching the congestion.
Your point's
Sorry.
well made.
I'm
Your point's
sorry.
well made.
I'm
Yeah, thank-
passionate about
Thank you,
it.
thank you.
So I appreciate you all coming here today. We can't have a conversation right now. If you have other concerns or solutions you'd like to share with my office, please do so. But I understand that we've been in very regular contact with Mr. Cowles for quite some time. I want to ensure you and the public
I
that,
do get my 3 minutes, right?
Yeah, she hasn't
Oh, yeah.
testified yet.
Yes, thank
I
you.
want to, but just if I could take a moment, I want to assure you and the public that 102nd Avenue hasn't been designated as a street where there will be no traffic enforcement. That's just not accurate. Enforcement is a key part of Vision Zero. It falls mostly outside of PBOT. And we just had a work session on it yesterday, so I'm really looking forward to conversations moving forward about how we, and the "we" I referred to in that quote, Mr. Cowles, was the collective "we," the entire city, all of the bureaus, TriMet and ODOT, how we can all work together to make our streets safer, because PBOT can't solve all the problems with traffic and traffic fatalities
And
by
Commissioner Daly,
themselves.
if I could build on your theme here, and then I'll get to Commissioner Fritz. I would, since you're obviously really passionate about this and you care deeply, and I appreciate this, I appreciate the detailed level of information that you're giving us. That's what communications is for, so thank you for doing it. I would really encourage you to review the testimony that was given yesterday during the work session on traffic enforcement, because I think it addresses some of the specific questions that you've raised in your testimony. It's worth a watch,
Okay, thank you, we'll do that.
and it's available online.
And a couple of the things that I learned at that work session. First of all, the Traffic Enforcement Division is going to be getting 25% more staff because their staff are not going to be assigned to patrol anymore. They're going to be focusing on traffic enforcement. The new police chief, Chief Fresh, shares the council's urgency over traffic enforcement. It is, as you mentioned, around 50 deaths is way too many. But the other thing I learned yesterday is that you can get trained to be a volunteer radar monitor in a school zone, that they will train you on how to do the radar, and then you take the picture of the license plate and they send a warning to the person you can't actually issue citations, but you can get people to get a warning letter. So that's something that Commissioner Daly and I are both really quite anxious to try.
Oh, that's terrific. The information obviously we have is previous to this most recent thing, so that's great. That would be terrific. We
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Good, thank you.
Continue.
Okay.
If you could restate your name for the record,
My
please.
name is Leila Coles. It's not actually Cowles, but it is Coles.
Thank
Just
you.
forget the W, just X it out. The only way to eliminate or reduce fatalities and serious injuries is to identify the causes and make specific plans to overcome the causes. Vision Zero and PBOT have failed to do so. And if it has changed, you have to understand, we had no information on that
That's fine.
before today.
That's fine.
In Portland, there are highly trained specialists in transportation safety analysis, independent of Vision Zero and PBOT. Someone similar to Robert King, a public safety consultant that I know that you know. Personal transportation safety expert Chris Kemlow recently discussed the 102nd project changes. I have reviewed the crash data and the Northeast 102nd Avenue project identified on the PBOT Vision Zero website. Your concerns are well-founded, particularly as they relate to serious injury crashes. These improvements are less effective at reducing or eliminating excessive speeding and alcohol-related accidents, while most corridor crashes, turning, angle, sideswipe, rear end, occur during congested periods and have less severity. Most speeding and alcohol crashes do not occur during these periods. The two elements of truly improving corridor safety are missing: increased enforcement and increased societal accountability. Solution: stop Vision Zero projects until an independent expert can analyze each project in relation to eliminating fatalities and serious injuries and make appropriate changes. People can accept frustration and anger due to an increase in congestion, travel time, minor accidents, as long as there's a very positive result, eliminating fatalities and serious injuries. When these goals aren't even remotely realized, Commissioner Udaley's quote applies. We have a lot of frustration born out of heavy congestion. We have a lack of enforcement, which makes people think they can take more risks on the road. Because Vision Zero's projects involve 30 major arterials, it will touch everyone. As the 62% disapproval score and numerous media reports show, the public isn't happy. We're sending a summary of this presentation to these groups to educate their people and request the City Council to hire an independent expert to analyze each of these projects. And hopefully the public will want to become involved in making sure that their streets are safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, all three of you. Any questions? Commissioner Fritz and then Commissioner Hardesty?
Sure. Okay. Thank you for coming. We're not going to have a conversation here. We need to move along.
Thank you for your time.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thanks for being
I
here.
appreciate you bringing your concerns. There are clearly some ongoing misunderstandings about Vision Zero and your group.
And we just used
And
102nd.
please,
Thank you.
So,
it's frustrating to have my quotes somewhat misunderstood or misrepresented. I have never suggested that the solution to our traffic fatalities is simply lies in enforcement. And some of the statistics behind those deaths support that. 30% of the 49 people who were killed on our streets last year died on ODOT properties. Those roads constitute 10% of the roads in our system. Those roads are not up to current safety standards. And so that's just one of many examples of how necessary safety improvements are. It is just an undeniable fact that we need to make our roads safer for all users, drivers, pedestrians, and cyclists. And none of the changes that we are making through Vision Zero, all of the changes are necessary safety improvements, but they alone cannot change behavior, and they cannot make up for under-enforcement. The reality of 102nd Avenue, which while we won't have a full report on the data until this winter because we need time to collect data, meaningful data, but preliminary analysis shows a decrease in speed and speeding on 102nd Avenue and almost no impact to bus or vehicle travel time or to vehicle volumes on neighboring streets. I'll leave it
You
at
mentioned
that.
I should get with you. Who do
No,
I-
I'm sorry.
who do I
There's not a
contact?
conversation happening right now.
You said I should meet with you or contact someone in your,
Well,
who should I contact?
we've actually have over 40 emails sent and received from you already, so I think you know who to contact, but it would be Jamie Duhamel in my office or whoever you've been dealing with at PBOT.
I just wanted to give you the context, having been on the council when we adopted Vision Zero in 2015. There's three tenets to Vision Zero: education, enforcement, and engineering. And all three of them are necessary. So that was the discussion of the council work session yesterday about increased enforcement. We also need to do, we need to do the engineering changes. There's a street in my neighborhood that has recently gone from 4 lanes with parking on both sides to one with a center turn lane. I am astonished at how much people are slowing down. And that brings me to another observation, that driving behavior, Mr. Walsh, that's really distracting to have you hold up a sign like that. Would you please not? Okay. Driving behavior in different parts of the city is very different. People on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard stop for pedestrians who are waiting to cross the streets. They don't in my neighborhood. The traffic changes that Vision Zero has done in my neighborhood have made people slow down. It's obvious that people are not doing that in your neighborhood, and that's something that we can all do something about. So as I mentioned, getting trained to do that volunteer radar detection might have a good outcome in your area. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Last individual, please, Carla, for communications.
Number 5, request of Chandra Evans to address council regarding bringing participatory budgeting to Portland. Shonda.
Shonda, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Shonda Evans. Thank you for your time this morning. I'd like to share with you my personal experience involvement with participatory budgeting, I'll shorten it to PB, in Councilman Brad Lander's District 39 in New York City. While it is impossible to compare Portland to New York City, which fully supports PB, I can share with you my unique perspective as a former resident who actively engaged and participated in PB and the benefits of bringing PB to Portland. PB can take many forms. It is unique to the residents that shape their communities who are engaged, committed, and support a constituent-driven democracy. As a volunteer delegate on the Education Committee, I worked with a small team of my fellow neighbors led by 2 experienced facilitators. We had an online presence and conducted outreach in our neighborhood. Some overlapped, some were rejected. The ideas generated by people varied as they were similar. One year, the PB demand for air conditioning in New York public schools was so great, Mayor de Blasio said, no more AC on the PC ballot. Too hot to learn was the city's pledge to ensure all schools had AC by 2022. Grassroots democracy brought change through PB to the entire public school system in New York City. PB can also reveal what cities fail to fully fund and highlight basic community needs. PB is more than using discretionary money set aside to whatever the committee's research and designate as ballot worthy. It is about building an inclusive and more equitable community. It is about bringing people together. It is about listening and going to the people to look at their ideas and encourage their voice to be heard. The PB process that was followed in New York City had a functional, user-friendly formula. Money was allocated to participating districts by this city, and the councilperson set aside a specific amount. The projects were placed on the ballot. Residents as young as 11 voted. In my district, Councilman Lander set aside $1.5 million with additional money for expense projects. Originally, I became interested in PB because I had an idea for an educational project. I did the research, created my model, and looked to allies for support. While the project involved 3 specific schools, it eventually resulted in a collaborative project between another committee and ours. Ultimately, it did not make the ballot. A new initiative was underway in 2017 by the New York Department of Education and School District 15 to create a more inclusive and diverse middle school admissions process. We realized this project would be best after the diversity initiative took root. Sometimes ideas evolve, are retooled, placed on the ballot again, only to be funded in a different PB cycle. I notice my time is up, so I will close.
You still have more time.
Oh, I
It's
do?
just your 1-minute notice.
Oh, brilliant.
30 seconds.
PB is by no means perfect, and the process may appear daunting. Portland has a unique opportunity to research and learn where the PB process is successful and thriving. What PB Oregon needs is a commitment from leadership in Portland so PB can be launched. We can have democracy at the street level. This is an amazing opportunity to harness the youth into civic participation. It's our future leaders we're looking at here. So thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you very much for that presentation. You talked about projects going to the ballot, election ballot, or is it a
PB
community?
ballot.
And so it's a different process than the
Yes.
electoral process?
Yes.
Okay, that was one question that I had. The and let me just be clear, we have no discretionary money this year. So
course.
we've looked at participatory budgeting over the last couple of years, I know. Me personally, I'm very interested in the process because I think it is a good community process. But when you have no discretionary dollars and you are reliant on the general fund, which is not going to have any new resources, we have to be creative about how we start a process without money to attract money.
Can be done.
Can be done.
It can be done.
Thank you.
Commissioner Daly.
Well, thanks for coming today. I'm friendly with Councilman Landers through Local Progress.
Brilliant politician there.
Yeah, or Lander.
Lander.
And my office is also really interested in public budgeting. I think the biggest hurdle for us was just what a huge undertaking it was. And as Commissioner Hardesty mentioned, we didn't have enough. We could have spent all the money we had available just on the process, but then we would have no money to allocate. And also, we could use more expertise. So if you'd like to talk to Jamie, my policy director, I think it's worth having a conversation, see if we can come up with something. We've done kind of what I'd consider like public budgeting light, like more of a community budgeting, but not this kind of formal process you're talking about. And
That would
I'm
be
really
brilliant.
intrigued.
Yeah, my time spent was an amazing, I mean, I was fortunate enough, Mayor de Blasio would peep in now and then on what we were doing. So it was a really engaged process, and it's been rooted in my district, former district, for a very long time. So they're valuable resources as well, not just me alone.
Thank
So,
you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate your being here.
Yes.
Carla, have any items been pulled off consent?
We've had no requests.
Call the roll.
Fritz.
Aye.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Udaley.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. Consent agenda is adopted. Next item, first time certain, item number 6.
Proclaim the second week of January 2020 to be Slavic and Eastern European Heritage Week.
Colleagues, I'm pleased to bring forth this proclamation on behalf of Commissioner Nick Fish. I'd like to begin by thanking Irene Konev for helping to organize our annual Slavic and Eastern European Heritage Week. Irene is the co-founder of the city's Slavic Empowerment Team. I'm pleased to introduce our invited testimony today, Alan Ellis, who's the president of the Portland-Khabarovsk Sister City Association, Maria Klemenko, who's from representing the Slavic Slavic Advisory Board, and Yves Winacki, a student in the Russian flagship program at Portland State University. Maria, thanks for being here, and you can go ahead and take it away.
Thank you very much for having me. My name is Maria Klemenko. I'm, as you mentioned, part of the Slavic Advisory Board. And I also have a student who goes to the Russian immersion program at Kelly. I'm honored to be here for the proclamation of Slavic and Eastern European Heritage Week. And I wanted to share a bit about my personal story as to why this is meaningful to me. I came here when I was 10 years old as a refugee from Ukraine with a single mother who basically had to start from zero, working 2 jobs to support us with all the language barriers and the struggle of what it means to be in a new home. I felt like an outsider at school without having a parent who was equipped to help and support me. There was a lot of pressure to assimilate. And there wasn't a lot of vocabulary to express the loss that I felt and that my mother felt of what it means to lose our homeland. And I think that the story of the Slavic community is really one of an invisible minority. Because we look the way we look, we've traditionally been grouped with white or Caucasian without really being able to understand all the implications and disparities of what it means to be part of the Slavic community. And just to clarify, Slavic is more than just from Russia or Ukraine. It's a very multi-ethnic, multiracial, multicultural community that includes a lot of the former Soviet republics. I think there's been certainly a shift since I was young, from the pressure to assimilate to really being able to celebrate and preserve our heritage for us and for our children. With that, I think that this proclamation is a very important first step in acknowledging our experience in helping to give our community a voice, and I hope that it will be part of the City of Portland's ongoing and continued acknowledgement, recognition, and support for our community and its needs. Russian speakers, in fact, are the biggest refugee group in Oregon, and it's the third most spoken language here, but we don't have enough data to separate us as a community to really understand the impacts of the disparities. So again, I'm very excited about this as an important first step. And lastly, I wanted to invite you all to our Slavic celebration and festivity hosted at ERCO tomorrow night from 6 to 8. So I hope as part of that support, we will have presence from the City of Portland. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
My name's Alan Ellis. I'm president of the Portland-Cobato Sister City Association. And I also taught Russian in Portland public schools for over 30 years. Maria was in our Russian club at Lincoln High School. As an active volunteer with sister cities and neighborhood associations, I know that I speak for thousands of Portlanders in expressing profound sadness and loss of a champion of diversity and equity in Commissioner Nick Fish. On a personal note, Nick was as kind as he was personable. Be it at City Hall or around town, he would always take the time to come up to me and say hi and encourage my work as a community volunteer. An avid jazz enthusiast, he delighted in attending our Sister City Association's Jazz Bridge Exchange concert a few years back, featuring visiting Russian musicians from Khabarovsk and an all-star Portland ensemble led by PSU professor of jazz Daryl Grant and jazz blues singer Marilyn Keller. Commissioner Fish, as you pointed out, Mr. Mayor, was instrumental in helping to get the ball rolling on establishing the first week of January in Portland as Slavic and Eastern European Heritage Week. He and his staff, especially Asena Lawrence, sitting behind us, worked closely with Heritage Week organizer Irene Konev, also sitting behind me, whose work in the auditor's office involves outreach to Portland's Slavic-speaking community, which includes tens of thousands of Russian speakers in the metropolitan area. Last May, Irene joined me and two other sister city colleagues in traveling to Khabarovsk to present newly elected Mayor Sergei Kravchuk with a copy of the Heritage Week proclamation at a high-level meeting attended by the city's top officials and covered by reporters from local media. The next day, the headlines were all about Portland's Russian heritage connection and the 31 years of Khabarovsk-Portland Sister City Partnership, a breath of fresh air for American-Russian relations. I should add that Irene Konev was raised in the Russian Old Believer community of several thousand who live and worship in the Woodburn-Jervis area, and her fluency in Russian made all the difference in effectively communicating the proclamation message to Russian officials, the media, and the general public. As Maria pointed out, in Oregon, Russian is only second to Spanish as a household heritage language, and I commend the Council for its ongoing recognition and support for this expansive and dynamic community. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Thanks for being here.
Good morning. It's an honor to be here today in celebration of the Slavic and Eastern European Heritage Week. My name is Ives Winnicki. I'm a fourth-year undergraduate student at Portland State University, and I'm pursuing a double major in computer science and Russian language, and I'm also part of the Urban Honors College at PSU and the Russian Flagship Program. So a little bit busy.
That's great.
I come from a traveling household. So my father was from the Air Force, and he's retired, now working with NASA, and my mother is an immigrant from the Philippines. So I can relate to the struggles of being a second-generation immigrant trying to find your identity in America. My family has moved to many cities and to many countries, from Australia to Japan, and then we moved to California and Hawaii, and then finally my father retired in New Mexico. And through all these travels, my only view into the Slavic and Eastern European culture was through action movies, video games, the internet, and news headlines. So I knew that this wasn't really an accurate portrayal of what the culture was actually like. I wanted to know more about the truth, not just the mysterious portrayal and the stereotypes that we so often see in the media. And so this is actually why I decided to move to Oregon and why I decided to pursue higher education in Portland State University. PSU is actually one of only 6 universities nationwide to have a Russian flagship program. And that's really special. It's thanks to the work and dedication of Sandra Friels and our amazing faculty and staff that students like me have this amazing opportunity to experience and learn more about the Slavic community and to prepare for international careers. For the past about 3.5 years, I've not only had the chance to study Russian language and culture, but also to be a part of the Russian-speaking community, both locally and abroad. From the cuisine to the music and the performances and my friendships, I've been really overwhelmed during my time here in Portland by the warmth and the hospitality of the Slavic community. There are many cultures, and the long-standing traditions carried from generation to generation has really enriched my worldview, and it's changed the way that I live my own life for the better. I've made countless friendships with Slavic coworkers and classmates, peers, and it's given me a deep appreciation and empathy not only for different cultures in the Slavic community, but for my own Filipino heritage. Many Americans are really interested, actually, in learning about Slavic and Eastern European cultures. But unfortunately, they don't have the resources or the community to properly explore this curiosity and learn more about the truth. That's why I believe that our Slavic community here in Portland is really so special and so important. I look forward to furthering my relationship with this community and continuing my studies with the Russian flagship program. And I'm proud to share my positive experience with you all, with my relatives and my colleagues. And it's my pleasure to celebrate the Slavic and Eastern European heritage with you this week.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for your testimony. We really appreciate it. Thank you for being here today. And I also want to encourage everybody to visit the atrium today between 10 and 12:30 to continue the Heritage Week celebrations. So thank you for being that. Colleagues, do you have any remarks before I read the proclamation? Very good. We'll read the proclamation, and then if people could join us up front for a photo, we'd appreciate that as well. So now I will read the proclamation. Whereas Slavic and Eastern European Americans are one of Portland's largest immigrant and refugee communities, with over 150,000 people in the greater Portland area. And whereas Slavic and Eastern European Portlanders can trace their ancestry to 15 countries in the former Soviet Union and 14 other European countries with unique languages, dialects, cultures, and histories. And whereas the city of Portland has many Slavic and Eastern European employees and a Slavic empowerment team that works to build a more inclusive and diverse workforce. And whereas the Slavic empowerment team shares culture, language, and art with city employees through celebrations, displays, performances. And whereas Portland is a welcoming and inclusive sanctuary city that celebrates its growing diversity. And whereas the city of Portland is proud of its relationship with all members of the Slavic and Eastern European community and will continue supporting their professional and economic advancement. Now, therefore, I, Ted Wheeler, the mayor of the city of Portland, Oregon, the city of roses, do hereby proclaim the second week of January 2020 to be Slavic and Eastern European Heritage Week in Portland and encourage all residents to observe this week.
Now, when you do that next year, could you please have somebody read it in Russian? Because I think the Russian language, I don't understand a word of it, but it's such a beautiful language to listen to. So,
it's a great idea, Commissioner. Thank you. Please. Ellen, can I get you to hold this? And I, excuse me, here. Thanks, Hassan. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Good seeing you. Bless you. Thank you. Bless you. Thanks again. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Absolutely. That's actually a really good idea. Thank you. Thank you. It's good to see you. Thank you. Thank you, Hassan. Appreciate it. Thanks. Carla, could you please read item number 7 on the time certain?
Accept Sport Oregon's, formerly Oregon Sports Authority, annual report on national and international sports marketing activities and event recruiting services.
Colleagues, please welcome Jim Etzel, the CEO of the Oregon Sports Authority, formerly known as the Oregon Sports Authority. I totally got that wrong. Let's try that again. Please welcome Jim Etzel, CEO of Sport Oregon, formerly known as the Oregon Sports Authority, to present their annual report to the City Council. This report is a requirement of the city's contract with Sports Oregon to provide sports marketing and event recruiting services. Sport Oregon works tirelessly to attract signature national and international sporting events to our city, providing exciting entertainment options, raising the city's profile, and supporting our local economy. The events they help bring to Portland also generate city revenues through increasing the number of hotel rooms booked by major event attendees and generating user fees for events at the Rose Quarter and Providence Park. Good morning. Thanks for being here.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners, for the opportunity to give the report. As stated, I'm Jim Etzel, the CEO of Sport Oregon. My sincere condolences for the loss of our friend and colleague, Nick Fish. I think Nick recognized what sports does for our community in unifying and pulling it together, whether it's at the grassroots, the collegiate or professional high school levels. He really saw the value in that. We so appreciated that. He also was very willing to give constructive criticisms and ideas and thoughts, and we took those to heart over the 26 years of our organization, 11 years that he sat on his council, and we value all of that. So our condolences to you, your staffs, his staff, and family.
Thank you.
Yes. Sport Oregon is two entities, one a nonprofit 501c6 corporation that we do most of our economic and development work in, and also 501c3, and that is our foundation where we focus on working with giving opportunities to underserved youth communities in the city of Portland and across the state to get them physically active and involved in sports. We're supported by 140 corporations and individuals, as well as the City of Portland, Travel Oregon, Travel Portland. We are self-funded by those members, and that provides our operating budget. Over 26 years, we've had $400 million of economic impact measurable in the state and in the city, and that we're very proud of. As you mentioned, we went through a rebrand this year, and moved away from Oregon Sports Authority as we were not a government entity and something that's more reflective and action-oriented of what we actually are. Sport Oregon has been very well received both locally and nationally, and we're excited about that. That work was done by one of our members, Wyden Kennedy, pro bono, so that was gratifying. We're also going to be moving into new offices at 1939 Southwest Morrison on the street level of a low-income, the Morrison Building housing project as part of the civic development. The space has been vacant 9 of the 12 years the building has been open. We think we're going to be a great new addition to the neighborhood and the street scene across from Providence Park and be part of the revitalization of the West End. So we're excited. We hope to be moving into those offices by April. It also gives us an opportunity to give space for community events for other nonprofits to host meetings and fundraisers. So it's part of our mission, and that mission is to drive economic and quality of life benefit in our communities through sports. So with no further ado, I'd like to jump into how we deliver value this past year to the city. The reporting period that we report on in this meeting is from July 1, 2018 through June 30th, 2019. First, I'd like to touch on the events, some of the high-level events, not all the events, because we'd be here quite some time. This past spring, we hosted the NCAA Women's Basketball West Regional in March at the Moda Center. This was the most successful women's basketball Western Regional in history of the NC2A. We're proud to be hosting it again this spring. Over 23,000 spectators attended. It was nationally televised on ESPN. Predominantly a local impact of the visitors are predominantly from the 4 schools, but the local citizens, we drive about 1.1 million of economic impact on that event. And obviously, we have local schools in University of Oregon, Oregon State, and Portland State University that all qualified for the NC2A, kind of reinforcing our position nationally as the mecca of women's sports
Can I ask
success.
you a question on that? So if you could go back, how do you calculate economic impact? Not at the granular level, but what are you including in economic impact?
Well, we look at the spending, both direct and indirect spending of the visitors, the teams, the NC2As,
How
the
do
media.
you do that? Do you do a random survey of hotels and restaurants, or how do you determine that 23,000 spectators spent something in the neighborhood of
Working with our partners at
1,075,000?
Travel Portland, there's booking portals that we run all the bookings through, and so we're able to measure those, so we know what the room impacts were. We also know what the user fees that we generate through ticket sales, and then, so those things are the multipliers that
So
we
is
use.
this is direct economic impact then? So you
Direct,
don't take
yes.
into account the
Yeah, we
secondary
want,
impacts through exposure on
a lo-
ESPN?
Yes.
Okay.
We want to be very, conservative with our estimates from a credibility standpoint. A lot of sporting events kind of blow the numbers up. We think it's really important to be real so we can really be credible, especially as a nonprofit. We have, part of our duty is to serve those that fund us and to be accurate with what our estimates are.
I appreciate that
Yeah,
approach. Thank you.
absolutely. Little League Softball World Series was at Alpenrose Dairy. 10 teams, one of which is from Oregon, which is very unique as being the host community. Oregon always gets a position in the tournament. They're from around the world. ESPN television this past year and also in this event in 2018, there was 27 games televised internationally on various ESPN platforms. Economic impact measured by this event was $650,000. I would like to make a note, as we all are aware of the situation out at Alpenrose with the family and the disputes there. And unfortunately, the World Series right now is in limbo, whether it's going to be here in 2020. We are very actively working with Little League Softball World Series in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. Also our friends in the community here at Adidas, who are the official supplier for Little League. And we are trying to salvage this event for 2020 and beyond in Portland or the surrounding metro area.
So given that the family dispute is likely to not be resolved quickly,
Yes.
is there any way to at least get forbearance for the next event in
That-
2020?
That's what we're working on, because Little League very much likes being in Portland, Oregon, as does ESPN. We think it's great for our community from an exposure standpoint, but it's really great for the young girls that get to participate from a team from our local community every year. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Are you in negotiations or discussions with the family about potentially having the event and being able to make the commitment for the event this summer?
We're actually working directly with Little League and Adidas, and they have a great relationship with the Kadenoff family.
Okay, terrific.
And so
And I
their
don't wanna
initial
get into
announcement decision was to not hold it out at Alpenrose in deference to the Kadenoffs, but I think the sentiment is shifting, so we're working on it.
Okay, and
It's-
I want to be
yeah.
respectful of their situation.
Yeah.
I don't want to make
Yeah.
light of it. I understand
Yeah.
it's complicated, but I'm wondering if, just given that those conversations amongst the family members are continuing, if there isn't some opportunity for us to at least have the event there this summer while they continue those important conversations amongst
Yes,
themselves.
that's what we're trying to do.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Is there a possibility of using Walker Stadium at Lentz Park as a backup?
There'd have to be significant dollars spent at Walker because it's set up for baseball, and Little League softball is on a 60-foot diamond versus a 90-foot, and it's not workable, but there are other facilities that we could possibly build temporary structures around within the community. Our ideal position would be at Alpenrose again, because the facility would be
When do you need to
functional.
have that locked down?
We thought we might have some answers right before Christmas. Little League postponed it, so hopefully by the end of this month.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Hersey. Okay, thank you.
The Grand Prix of Portland, the venue, Portland International Raceway, a city facility, 90,000 spectators, NBC Sports, plus over 200 countries internationally from Portland. This one is of major significance economic impact-wise. Its return 1 year ago after a 12-year absence was significant. It comes on an ideal weekend from the hospitality industry standpoint, Labor Day weekend, where is about the only weekend during the summer where we're low on room nights. We had 7,500 minimum room night increase over Labor Day weekend over the years prior, and $8 to $10 million dropping in the local economy. There's 12 owners in IndyCar, all of which are billionaires, and they come in and spend a lot of money locally, especially in the restaurant and hotels. This past year's event was the second highest rated open wheel racing event on television behind the Indy 500. A lot of that has to do about the date, Labor Day. It's a great date for our city, but it's also a great date for the television and exposure. What's been very interesting is starting to work more with Travel Portland and Travel Oregon as they really see the value of this, both domestically and internationally, and how we can work with Green Savory Racing to increase the impacts and solidify them in Portland. I know they're just about ready to sign a 3-year extension to stay in the city, so we're very excited about that. We have made 3 trips to Indianapolis to meet with them. We were just with them each of the last 2 days, and also kind of trying to reconnect IndyCar with the Rose Festival Association. So things are going well.
Is there more that we can do to be helpful?
Right now, I think the city has been seen as a really willing partner, and I think at this time there's no glaring thing that jumps out. I think what we want to do is continue to look at the investments. I know the race promoter invested significantly at PIR, but I think the paving that went on in some of the parking lot areas and so forth last year was part of normal maintenance, went a long way. So we'll continue to keep those things on our radar.
All right, and let us
And
know
we'll
if
let you
there's more
know.
that we can do or more
Yeah.
that I can do. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Event bids that we submitted in that period. We are in the process of bidding for the women's basketball Final Four in either 25 or 26. We were just in Indianapolis making a presentation in December. We'll be seeing the NC2A again this Monday in New Orleans, a meeting with the committee on this. We will know at the end of January if we are a finalist city. And then over the course of the spring and summer, they will be visiting our city and evaluating the opportunity here. We'll go back to Indianapolis if we're selected as a finalist in September and make our final presentation. Our partners in this are the Portland Trailblazers, Travel Portland, and Oregon State University. How we demonstrated what success looks like last year and what we're going to demonstrate again in March with the Western Regional again has gone a long way. They really recognize that this is the perfect city to host this event. The impacts are far more significant with a Final Four than they are with a regional final, in that there is, we literally would fill up virtually every hotel room in the city. The Final Four, the travel parties are significantly larger from the 4 finalist schools. There's 750 media that cover it. There's 500 ESPN personnel that come in for the broadcast compound. It's a very significant event. Most importantly, there's a 3,000-person coaches convention. So that is in town for 5 days during this event. So we would have a significant number of visitors. We would rent every square inch of the Oregon Convention Center, fill up every room in the core hotels in downtown. And I think from diversity, equity, inclusion standpoint, we're a very attractive market for this event to the NC2A and to the basketball community in general. And it has not been on the West Coast since 1998. It's time to come west, and we hope we're the one. So we'll keep you posted. I know the media has been covering us on that.
Yeah, we should just pause at that point.
What was that?
We should just pause for a shout out to the Convention Center Hotel,
Yes.
which is really making it possible for us to bid on something like that.
Not just this, but a handful of other things that are on our radar for the future that we never could go after before. So, and also just that fact that that hotel opening might also create several other hotels in that area that will further enable us to be a more significant player nationally. So very excited. It's a game changer in a lot of ways, not just in our industry. We're also in a bid cycle for more regionals, both for women and men, at the Motor Center. So we've been in a bid process now. Final submissions are in February for that, for the cycle 2023 through 2026. Also working with Travel Portland, Blazers, and Oregon State on that bid cycle. Separately, another bid cycle for the women's volleyball Final Four, very similar to the women's basketball Final Four. Ideal market. It fills the arena. 4,000-person coaches convention plus a 1,200-person youth national tournament that would be here that week. That would be in December, which is a sorely needed economic boost in the hospitality industry. That's where we have our biggest capacity. I'm not going to say that I'm tremendously confident that we can win the volleyball in this cycle because we've never bid for it before, but we need to put a stake in the ground that we want it. So it starts now, and hopefully it sets, if we don't get it, we can, it establishes this as a legitimate site for the future. We're also in negotiations because of the success, you may recall, of the U.S. Figure Skating Synchronized Championships that were here, where we rented Veterans Memorial Coliseum for 5 days and had 3,000 competitors, all from out of state, come into that in February of 2018. These usually bid out 4 years. It was stated by U.S. Figure Skating it was the most successful event they had ever hosted. In that category for synchronized skating, they have upticked us and want to come back because of that success. So right now, working to see if we can make that happen. Triple Crown Softball U.S. Nationals. This was a quick bid cycle, came up last year. We worked very closely with the Parks Bureau on this, and 3,000 room nights. We don't have an estimated economic impact. It's to be determined, but 3,400 room nights. Multiple fields, Delta Park. If it's successful, there could be a long-term commitment to this, which they also would commit some dollars to parks for lighting enhancements to Delta Park that would be contributed by the event operator, which would be interesting. Future events, and there's some overlap because of some of these bids fell in the same cycle. As I mentioned earlier, I won't spend much time on this, but we're hosting again Western Regionals this March at MODA and expect to leverage this success and have even greater. To give you an interesting point here, last year at this time, we had sold 1,800 pre-sold tickets for the event. At this time this year, for the same event, we sold 6,000 already. So people are excited. Roadrunners Club of America Convention, building on our running heritage as a state and a city, is coming this spring, filling up the Hilton Hotel, 400 attendees. Also, the National Veterans Wheelchair Games. We worked really hard with the Veterans Administration to win this bid, and with Travel Portland, there'll be 700 competitors traveling from around the country here. It'll be at the Oregon Convention Center this summer. We think this is going to be a very exciting event. Triple Crown, as we mentioned, there was a quick bid cycle. That's why it's listed twice, so that event actually happens this summer. Grand Prix of Portland is back and expect to grow. Ticket sales are ahead of previous years. And as I said, we're meeting regularly with them. We see this as being a critical event to have success here.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is just, is this estimated economic impact annually or is this
Annually.
combined?
Annually.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you. We're also been working very diligently for the last 12 months with a lot of city bureaus to partake in Oregon 21, which is the World Athletics Track and Field Championships that are going to be held in Eugene. First time the event's ever been held in the United States. It is the largest sporting event in the world in 2021, televised in over 300 countries, NBC here locally or domestically. We've all seen the publicity and news reports about the state's support in obtaining this event. It'll be in the new Hayward Field in Eugene. But we really want to have, Portland is the gateway for all of the competitors, visitors, spectators that'll come. This is truly a global event. It's the largest global sporting event that the state has ever hosted. Portland will have a lot of spillover benefit from this, but we're trying to create direct benefit by hosting the World Championship marathons, both the women's marathon on one weekend and a men's marathon on the other, and then also working for some local citizen components, both a global citizen and a local citizen components on this. The World Athletics is going to be in town this Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday to review our course with us, along with PBOT and Portland Police, who've been working very diligently with us, along with the mayor's office and the other bureaus, parks included. This is significant in that it really showcases Portland on international television. The ratings for a marathon, which is kind of hard for us to fathom, but in Asia and Japan are equal to what Super Bowl ratings are in the United States. And that's of significant interest to travel Portland and travel Oregon. And those are key markets for us, from a visitor standpoint and from a business trade standpoint. So we'll have more to report on in the next 45 days on how that all ends up. We also are working on we landed the 2022 NERSA, National Intramural Recreational Sports Convention, 3,000 out-of-state visitors coming in for that in 2022. Part of our mission is to work on franchise pursuits, not just in Portland, but across the state, and facility development. There's a couple areas, obviously the Portland Diamond Project, very involved with them. Work with them on a weekly basis in furthering their pursuit. And I think they've been doing a good job on taking care of what they can take care of, and it's really kind of up to baseball whether they want to come here. So they built a compelling case to baseball of why Portland. Veterans Memorial Coliseum, we're currently, our staff is on the committees evaluating the project and so forth for the future of Veterans Memorial Coliseum. So we sit on that advisory committee and are active participants in that and contributors. Also, the Lincoln High School Stadium, this has been put to bed, but we're kind of the linchpin in the city of Portland, Portland Public Schools, Portland State University, and doing a pretty deep dive into the feasibility with the new Lincoln High School of creating a home for Portland State University football and women's soccer. It looks like the feasibility of building a 5,000-seat stadium just isn't in the cards for Portland State. It's about $55 to $65 million that they would have to cover the delta, and they wouldn't own the facility, so they're looking at other alternatives. But I think this is a very worthwhile process. If it would have happened, it would have been an incredible asset to the community in downtown Portland. Community impact, we just completed our 5th year of the Sport Oregon Tracktown Youth League. We put on 16 all-comer meets around the state. We have 2 in Portland at Roosevelt and David Douglas High Schools. Competitors from these local meets all matriculate up to a state championship meet, which is held in Eugene at Hayward Field. We've had 7,500 participants in this in 5 years. This last year, we had 2,200. This has really become a very popular deal. We chose track and field because of its accessibility. We actually, it's a low barrier entry sport, and it's easy. All you need is a pair of shoes and to run. We actually scholarship shoes if kids don't have shoes to run. If kids qualify and their families don't have the means to get to the state championship, we actually pay for their mileage and so forth to do that. It's a tremendous program and been very well received, and now it's being replicated in other parts of the country, so we'll take that as a compliment. Street Soccer USA, this is a unique program that we helped establish in Portland 3 years ago. It provides accessibility to soccer for homeless youth or those in danger of homelessness. There is a potential. We'd love to host a regional or national homeless street soccer event in the future because of the success of this chapter. This was started in New York City. We saw it and brought it to the attention of the soccer community here and helped launch this nonprofit, get them going. It expanded programs in East Portland and then also in some Southwest Portland community centers this year. Play It Forward is a grant program we have with Nike and Providence. This past year, we gave 9 grants totaling $45,000 to these well-deserving recipients. All of these, we don't believe in empowering the biggest. We want to help those that are on mission with what we do, so we only make grants to nonprofits around programs that they're developing that have annual budgets as an entire nonprofit of under $700,000 a year. So you won't see us giving grants to Boys and Girls Club or a place like that. Well-deserving, but they have great support groups. We try to kind of create lift for emerging groups that are filling gaps that aren't being served. You will see Special Olympics on there, and that is, we felt, with their trying to rise from the ashes. It's a very critical program we see in our state and one we felt we needed to support. Thank you. Any questions?
Very good. Colleagues? Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you. Just one. You have a 5-year contract. What year are you in that contract?
I'm in just starting my 3rd year as CEO, but I believe, Carl, we're entering our 3rd year?
So this current fiscal year is the 4th year. You just reported.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
Very good. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to accept the report.
We have a motion from Commissioner Fritz, a second from Commissioner Hardesty. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Fritz.
It was very fitting that you gave this report on the day that we're honoring Commissioner Fish, amongst many days that will happen in the future. He certainly embraced sports being a really essential part of life. Aye.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Udaley.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Full disclosure, it's not really conflict, but I think it's important to disclose. I formerly sat on your board,
Yes.
But I'm obviously very appreciative and supportive of the work you do, and I appreciate the great success that you've achieved over the last year. And it looks like 2020 is going to be an incredible year.
We're going to have some big
We
things.
appreciate the
We're
work
excited
you're
for it.
doing. I vote aye. Report's accepted. Thank you.
One last thing I'd like
Sure.
to add that we did make a grant to the Barbara Walker Crossing over Burnside. Our board was very inspired by that, so congratulations on getting that one across the line. It'll be a great asset to the community.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Next item, Carla, is the regular agenda item number 12.
Authorize an intergovernmental agreement with Metro for a total amount of $841,931 for the annual waste reduction plan, recycle at work, and business food waste requirements.
Colleagues, we often engage in partnerships with other local governments that allow us to reach common goals. This agenda item covers accepting funds from Metro to allow us to continue our progress towards meeting our climate action plan goals and the Metro Regional Waste Plan goals. Metro has provided waste reduction program funding to the city each year since 1990. These funds support the Bureau of Planning Sustainability staffing and outreach efforts to increase participation in recycling, composting, and waste prevention programs. Jill Kullick, Sustainability Program Manager from the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, is here to provide us with some additional information about the partnership and the great work we've achieved together. Good morning. Thanks for being here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners, my name is Jill Kullick, and I'm with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. As Mayor Wheeler stated, the year 2020 marks 30 years of this financial partnership between Metro and the City of Portland. Through this partnership, my team and I have collaborated with Metro to develop and implement a wide array of waste recycling composting programs for residents and businesses in Portland. The funds allocated through Metro's intergovernmental agreement are adjusted on an annual basis and based on population data, both residential and employee counts. For the 1920 year, Metro is providing us with a little over $840,000. The majority of the Metro's funds go directly to paying for subject matter expert staff who develop and implement policies and programs at BPS. I'm pleased to share a high-level sampling of the varied and important work my team accomplishes through the support of these funds. This publication might look familiar. So a few ongoing program efforts include the Curbside Hotline team. They answer thousands of calls from Portlanders' most pressing recycling, composting, and garbage questions in real time, 5 days a week. We also, twice a year, mail out the Portland Curbsider to 185,000 households. BPS coordinates the Regional Master Recycler Program. The program recruits, trains, and provides volunteer opportunities to a pool of over 7,400 people. BPS relies on this knowledgeable volunteer pool to work in their communities promoting the city's message and goals around recycling, composting, greener cleaners, and sustainable consumption. Each year, they make tens of thousands of community contacts through a variety of activities, such as organizing litter and community collection cleanups, staffing information booths, writing articles, and presenting to faith-based organizations in their workplace. Another ongoing program deliverable is a Sustainability at Work program. The program helps hundreds of businesses green their workplace operations. A sustainability advisor offers on-site assessments, provides recommended best practices, educational resources, and connections to service providers, such as reuse organizations and food rescue agencies. In addition, the program offers recognition and has certified over 300 plus businesses, government, and nonprofit workplaces. We've also recently rolled out a few waste prevention policies. Starting in October, Portland launched a single-use plastics reduction policy that restricts how food and beverage establishments can offer single-use plastics such as straws and utensils to their customers. It's essentially upon request. We also recently brought forward, actually in November, an updated ordinance that requires homes built before 1940 to no longer be demolished by bulldozers and landfilled. They must instead be deconstructed piece by piece and the materials salvaged for reuse. The ordinance amends the original policy to advance the year-built threshold from 1916 to 1940, increasing the number of home demo permits captured under this policy from 33 to 66% of the total market. Next, I want to share a few forward-looking initiatives that are in process and will be coordinated and implemented regionally. We're collaborating with Metro and the surrounding jurisdictions on implementing a multifamily service improvement project. The project includes new regional standards for garbage and recycling service levels, bulky waste management, educational signage and container stickers, and container color coding. So the container colors will be similar to the residential program. Green will connote compost, blue recycling, and gray and black for garbage. Ultimately, multifamily residents will experience a garbage and recycling collection setup that is consistent no matter where they live, whether it's Portland, Hillsborough, Beaverton. Also, we're in the process of receiving a $100,000 grant from the Recycling Partnership to pass through to community groups to help with tenant education and engagement around this effort. Wasted food is a key area of focus for BPS and Metro. Food scraps make up about 18% of our waste stream. Half of that comes from businesses. Our highest priority in this area is preventing the wasting of food in the first place through supporting businesses and household practices around careful planning, purchasing, and preparation. However, some leftovers are inevitable, and this is where our team matches good quality surplus food to rescue agencies such as food banks, pantries, meal sites for donation. The business food scrap separation policy is aimed at capturing the food that cannot be prevented or donated. Policy implementation is underway. All food businesses, such as restaurants, grocery stores, institutional kitchens, and schools, will be required to keep food scrap out of the garbage. This policy will start with official notification this spring to the largest food businesses and will be phased in over a period of 4 years. In total, of about 3,000 Portland businesses will be included. Portland will offer assistance and outreach to all businesses before compliance, monitoring, and enforcement begins. Very small businesses, such as individual food carts, will not be required to comply, but may do so if they choose.
Is that something, who authorized that policy? I support it, but is that something that?
It's been on the books since 2008, and we finally have the local processing capacity to handle it. So we're working regionally with, Washington County, Clackamas County, to start rolling it out over the next 4 years.
Did the Metro Council pass that policy? Or?
It is part of their regional waste plan, but it's also in our Portland Recycles plan from that time period as well.
Thank you.
And yeah. So with that wraps up what I'm going to share with you today. We do a lot of great work with these funds. When passed, this ordinance will authorize a 1920 intergovernmental agreement that supports the continuation of this work and many other initiatives outlined in Metro's 2030 Regional Waste Plan. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Colleagues, any questions at this point? Excellent presentation.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Carla, do we have anyone signed up for public testimony?
Yes, one person, Maggie.
Come on up. Good morning.
Happy New Year,
Thank you. You too.
even though it's not a Happy New Year for Valerie or Linda, who died over the holidays and cannot be eulogized by you. Valerie died over by Providence Park, where you're supposedly building that beautiful supportive housing. She was kicked out of TPI.
Maggie,
And then
Maggie,
kicked out of the
Can you
hospital
please stick to
while
the
she was
ordinance that's
coughing
at
up
hand?
blood, and then she died. And, it's fine for you to
Maggie, this
eulogize
is a serious
fish.
issue
Yes,
that you're
I know.
describing, and I appreciate
Shelters
it.
are
But this
the
is also
probably
in
your
violation of the council rules, which were clearly read at the beginning. And if you, I'm sorry, Maggie, I'm going to have to ask you to take your seat.
Of recycling waste, they probably have the largest fines of any business in Portland or anywhere. They throw away they do massive single use. They throw away massive amounts of
She's back on
clothing,
subject now.
of
It's
waste.
loose, but she's back on subject.
In fact, they have
okay.
fines. They
It's
get
okay.
fined regularly by sanitation. I don't see you saying to them, hey, you gotta cut down on your single-use stuff. I don't say, homeless people, they collect all the plastic bottles. I don't see you, they food waste out of the garbage, they leftovers. I don't see you providing them with places to go to the bathroom. In fact, fish.
Maggie, could I make a suggestion? Can I make a friend, I'm not, just a sec, I'm not going to take your time, but can I make a friendly suggestion? Can I make a friendly, listen, this is not about what we're discussing. We are going to actually, can you listen for 5 seconds? Can you please listen for 5, please? No, what I'm telling you is if you can wait for a few more minutes, we're going to have a presentation from the people who actually provide exactly the services you are saying we do not provide. Why don't you listen to the presentation? Fine, go ahead. Continue.
And you have just cut into my time.
I have not.
And I would like an extra minute because you have cut
No.
into my time telling me my opinion does not matter.
I'm telling you, you're not speaking to this particular ordinance. You're here to waste our time.
The fact that you want to encourage businesses to recycle. Isn't that what this is about? Well, the shelters are the worst offenders. They have the biggest fines from sanitation and waste because they throw everybody's stuff.
Thank you,
away.
Maggie.
They limit.
Please
the
take your
amount of
seat.
time that people
If you do
can
not
have
take your
to
seat,
do
I'm going to
that.
ask you to leave.
Yeah,
We'll take a 2-minute recess.
throw their clothing away.
This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Next item, please. Item number 13.
Authorize a matching grant fund not to exceed $460,596,000, and grant agreements to assist in the cost to purchase and install safety equipment, specifically side guards on garbage and recycling collection vehicles.
Colleagues, the City of Portland is committed to making our streets safer. The Portland City Council adopted Vision Zero. You heard a little bit about that this morning. It's a plan that calls for zero traffic deaths in Portland through a comprehensive approach outlining 32 different actions. Providing a safe environment for vulnerable road users, defined as cyclists, walkers, and people using transportation assistance devices and scooters, is a priority for the City of Portland. As we look to the future and expand participation in alternatives to single occupancy vehicle transport, we all need to be safe moving around the city. I think we all acknowledge that. The Bureau of Planning and Sustainability has worked in partnership with the Bureau of Transportation to identify and act on an aspect of large truck use in Portland that poses a life-threatening risk to vulnerable road users. I'd like to applaud the Planning and Sustainability Commission for highlighting this issue and advocating for exploration of this safety equipment. I'd like to introduce Pete Chisholm-Winfield with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability to give Council a short presentation on side guards and answer any questions that we may have. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. I'm Pete Chisholm-Winfield, with the project manager for the side guards with BPS. I am joined here with my supervisor and the solid waste and recycling manager with BPS, Bruce Walker. First off, before we begin, I'd like to thank you all for your heartfelt words this morning. That was very important, and our condolences to you.
Thank you.
BPS is responsible for regulating the garbage, recycling, and composting collection for residents and businesses. As a part of this role, BPS establishes rules that improve safety for workers and vulnerable road users. Side guards are installed to close the gap between the front and rear axles of a large truck to prevent harm to cyclists and pedestrians in the event of a side collision. And that gap is closed so that if it turns into a person walking or cycling, it would knock them over, as opposed to them getting sucked into the middle of the vehicle, underneath the vehicle. This ordinance authorizes a matching grant to assist garbage and recycling companies with installing the side guards, and it's intended to do two things. One, to accelerate the installation by providing financial assistance, and two, reducing the potential rate increases to customers. All of these companies together purchase anywhere between 30 and 40 trucks a year. We're proposing doing 385 trucks, so it's quite a glut of work that we think needs to be done right away. So as you can see on the slide here, there's an example of the side guards. Side guards are commonplace in European cities and gaining momentum in the United States, particularly in cities that are dense, becoming more dense, and are proactively encouraging their residents to cycle and get out of their vehicles to transport themselves. So you'll see in this the number of cities that are actively working toward this, and Boston and New York, I think, are much more advanced.
Thank you. So based on this map, does this mean that we have implemented these guides?
Yeah, so based off of the map, this is acknowledging the work that the city of Portland has done to its own vehicles.
Oh, this is just the city's property vehicles?
Exactly.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So that would be a separate from what this proposal would be, which would be putting them on the large trucks that service from the private companies.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. So Portland City Council, as we've all heard earlier today, adopted Vision Zero. And a part of that was to identify this action with contracted services. BPS has actively collaborated with PBOT staff. We compare notes. We've attended each other's meetings. We raise awareness with each other. We talk about the logistics of installing this. And so I want to give a quick shout out to Shayna Hobbs, Clay Vega, and Dana Dickman with PBOT who have helped us with this project. BPS staff have also received guidance from staff at the Volpe Center, a safety research program with the U.S. Department of Transportation, and used their specifications, which are an attachment, to understand how to properly install the side guards so that they do what they're intended to do. And we did a pilot project that gave us information about costs, operations, and installation that are that information was used into the proposal that you're seeing today. So as of January 2020, all new collection vehicles purchased by garbage and recycling companies will be required to have these installed. So as we move forward and we see new trucks servicing Portland customers, they will be required to have this piece of equipment. So all of the older trucks that we're trying to get up to speed and eliminate that risk.
Can I ask you a question? Is that something that we are installing, or do we have a vendor who installs those? How is that actually being done?
So the proposal is set up so that the private company selects a vendor, and there's a local company called General Equipment that does a lot of this work for garbage and recycling companies. So it's likely that a lot of them will go to that company for this
This
work.
meets all federal safety standards. So this isn't something that we're just doing makeshift. This is done to a particular spec or to particular design or to a particular safety standard?
Yes, and one of the exhibits is the actual Volpe specs that show the measurements that are required. And so as we would be providing reimbursement, we would actually be sending an inspector out to check to make sure with the tape measure that all of the specifications are being met according to the Volpe Center.
And I assume the answer to this question, but I just have to ask, I assume that we've also had the conversation with risk management, and this does nothing to negate any insurance or liability issues?
With regard to the private companies?
With regard to, if you have a warranty on a roof, and you alter that roof, it can actually negate the warranty on that roof. I just want to make sure there's not any ancillary risk exposure to the city of Portland.
Do
you understand the question? Maybe I'm not asking the question precisely.
We've not contacted directly risk management, but this is the same vendor and the same project that was used on all the city vehicles, the large trucks. So we believe we're acting in concert with the PBOT directive that's already installed the side guards on heavy city vehicles.
Where did the Volpe, you described this as a Volpe standard? Did I get that right? Volpe standard?
Volpe, yeah, they're in
Where does that
Cambridge.
standard come from? Who established that standard?
So they studied, what they did was look at all the specifications that were developed in the European policies, and they took all those specifications. They also do lots of crash scenarios. So they set up these scenarios where they would put a dummy bicycle going next to a truck, and they would show it. You can actually look it up on the Googles, but it shows that with the side guard, the cyclist gets pushed aside, which is one of the reasons why the 400 pounds per square inch is a part of that specification. So it's strong enough to push somebody aside.
Okay,
and without it,
it looks right,
under.
but I just want to, and do we have data that shows that in the field that is actually the way it works, or do we know?
As far as the pounds per square inch aspect of the specification?
No, I don't care so much. They look pretty strong. I'm not concerned about that. I just want to know that the product does what it's supposed to be doing. Do we have any, there's multiple cities around the country, do we have any data that shows they actually work, that they do what they're supposed to be doing?
Well, as far as information that we have,
information.
We have the two companies that provided this service. One is a company in Seattle called Walker Blocker, and they've worked with Seattle and the University of Washington. And there's another Italian company called Tackler. So these companies have been doing this for other areas for a long time, and they also, in addition to us, work directly with the Volpe Center to figure out what their specifications are, so that when they
I
install
would
that
like to
equipment-
suggest this because, it appears to make sense. It seems like it's a good idea, but in the spirit of this being a long-term strategy for the city of Portland, if nobody else is collecting this information or data, I suggest that we do it. I would like us to track whether or not there are interactions with pedestrians or cyclists or people on walkers or people on scooters. And I'd like to have something other than anecdotal information about what the real impact of these are.
Here, here.
Commissioner Hardesty, did you have a question?
Sure.
I did.
Yeah, and I have heard from City of Boston staff that after they've installed side guards, they had one instance that they reported that the side guard literally resulted in pushing a cyclist to the side and saving their life.
So the whole goal is to keep them out from under the back tires. Is that sort of
Exactly.
the play here? Okay. Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. I also want to follow up on one of the questions the mayor asked. I think it's really important to make sure that we're not shifting liability if there is an accident to the city of Portland, because we have installed this equipment onto a truck. Because in a car, if you make any changes, your warranty is invalid as well, right? So it's just a conversation with legal counsel to just figure out to make sure that we're on good legal ground when we start implementing this. My next question was going to be, you're only going to be installing these on new trucks, right? Or are you installing them on all the trucks that recyclers will be using in our community?
All right, just to be clear, the new trucks that these private companies will be purchasing will be responsible for putting the equipment on their truck prior to the service. This
this is for the-
proposal is for all the old trucks to retrofit the equipment on the old trucks.
And are we prioritizing trucks that have less emissions? Are we prioritizing trucks that we expect will be on the road longer, right? Right, because there's like a life cycle for these trucks, and what we know now about emissions, I would think that we would want to be very thoughtful and not actually put equipment on trucks that we're hoping to convince folks to retire, right? So that they could get more energy efficient equipment that will be riding through our neighborhoods.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and we actually have put in the proposal, there's a limit for trucks that are 2010 and greater and newer because of the federal emission regulations on 2010 trucks. So that has been taken into consideration. We want to make sure and phase out those older, dirtier trucks.
Right, and give an encouragement, right, to be able to get those older trucks off the road, because that's would be the goal.
And Pete, just one more comment. Since we're not voting today, this is a first reading. If you could just check with risk management and legal counsel and maybe get back to me on the issues that I'd asked about. Commissioner Fritz?
No problem.
Bruce has got more
Oh,
information.
I'm sorry, Bruce.
I'd like to just amplify one more answer to Commissioner Hardesty. Pete has worked very hard to bring forward our clean fleet policy, which we have requirements that those older trucks are being retired. So I just want to amplify that this is what we're targeting are the less polluting, the newer trucks, and that's a requirement that we have, unlike any other jurisdiction in the state of Oregon, it's what we call clean fleet, and now we're trying to make it a safer fleet.
And we paid more on our garbage fees in order to be able to do that. The city helped. The city was responsible for making sure that that was financially viable for all of the companies.
And Mayor Wheeler, we work very closely with legal on bringing this forward. So, but we will do further connection on the risk management portion.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
It's always better to ask ahead of time, right? Ask at the front end rather than the back end, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right. Thank you. So to continue the average cost, I know there's the glut of work that would need to be done for the retrofits for brand new trucks, though the cost is much less. It's about less than 0.05% increase cost of a new vehicle. So So I'm just going to, the other thing I wanted to make sure to say is that it's designed so that there's more of an incentive in the first year so that we can, again, accelerate and eliminate this risk. So 60% reimbursement in the first year and 40% in the second year. But companies that are registered as women and minority-owned through the state's co-bid program will be receiving, in this proposal, 100% reimbursement for the SAG grants. So, and if you have any other questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
We've had at least one fatality of this kind of crash, right?
Yeah, there has been one that I know of that was directly a result of an impact with a garbage truck, and there have been others that have been impacted with other different types of trucks. But it has been identified. Again, as cities get denser and we try to get more people out of their cars, we anticipate that this risk would just increase over time with Portland.
It seems to me, colleagues, that the liability risk is in not doing this, that we know that these trucks are dangerous, and if we don't do something, we are really in trouble.
Yeah, I think on balance, that's exactly right. I just want to make sure we have all our bases covered. Commissioner Fritz?
No.
Hardesty, I'm sorry. I know who you are.
I was just going to say I agree with Commissioner Fritz, but I also know that if we alter someone's vehicle and we don't know who's going to be liable if something happens to that vehicle, we could be in a whole world of hurt down the road. So I think it's important to have that info up front.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does that complete your presentation? Great, thank you. We appreciate it very much. Carla, do we have anybody signed up for public testimony?
Yes, we have 3 people, Chris Smith, Maggie, and Jillian Detweiler.
Great, and I will just remind people that testimony is to be focused on the issue at hand, as per the council rules, which were read at the beginning of the hearing, and if people are not going to stick to the point, we will ask you to leave. Good morning.
Good morning. Chris Smith. I'm Vice Chair of the Planning and Sustainability Commission. However, today I'm speaking as an individual. And before I launch into this topic specifically, I just want to comment on Vision Zero in general, relevant to the earlier comments. The city of Oslo, Norway, in 2019 achieved 0 traffic deaths, utilizing frameworks very similar to what we're pursuing in Portland. Now, obviously, they are much further down the road, particularly in engineering efforts. But the formula of reducing automobile speeds and in some places the presence of automobiles has been proven out in that context. So I just want to reinforce, the efforts that we're making.
Thank you.
A few years ago, we reorganized oversight of the city utility bureaus, and one of the side effects of that is that the PSC became the recommending body for recycling and solid waste rates. Not wanting to waste a regulatory opportunity, every time the rates were presented to us, I asked what we were doing about truck safety. And I want to thank very much Bruce and BPS management who rose to the challenge, and Pete, who has become the subject matter expert on truck safety. This has been a great step forward, and the answer is yes, there have definitely been deaths in Portland due to what we call hook accidents, and a hook accident with a large vehicle is probably one of the things that cyclists fear the most. Tracy Sparling, Brett Jermolak are 2 names that came to mind. Those resulted in the We Are All traffic protests. Commissioner Fritz, you may remember those having been, I think, in your election cycle at that time. So the community definitely rose to the occasion. We've made engineering changes to support that. I mean, the bike box program was a direct result in some ways of that. Closing a right turn opportunity on Interstate Avenue was another result of those collisions. This is a vital program. I'd note I encourage you to do your due diligence, but the requirement for these retrofits has already been implemented in administrative rule. This grant simply accelerates the implementation, and grateful to have it do that. And finally, I'd note this is really just a first step. If you look at where the Europeans are on truck safety, there are a number of measures. Side guards are one. Mirror systems are another, to make sure that the driver can see a cyclist or pedestrian who may be alongside the truck. and the design of the truck cab is another. If you look at European trucks, you'll see that the cabs look like big glass bubbles, so they have much greater visibility, and I would encourage us to keep pursuing all of those avenues. And finally, I'll say that I was in communication with Jess Thompson, who's the executive director of Oregon Walks. She sends her regrets that she can't be here, but she asked me to express her support for this measure, so I encourage you to adopt it. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Jillian Detweiler, the Executive Director of the Street Trust, and I'm also here today to ask you to approve this ordinance. Vehicle design is really important. This is an item that the City of Portland can take on through its regulatory authority. I'd really like to commend the interbureau and interdisciplinary approach that put Vision Zero and traffic safety together with our, solid waste regulation. Love seeing that collaboration. In our vision of the future, people use the vehicle that is right for the trip, and someday there will be no need for large vehicles in dense urban areas. We'll be able to, access a bike, an e-bike, a scooter, walk safely. But until we get there, these measures help save lives, and so we appreciate this action. I did want to note, it's always interesting to come to the City Council. I was interested to hear the presentation from the folks along 102nd. Commissioner Udaly, I appreciated you trying to bring out some of the complexity around Vision Zero, and I was also very interested to learn about the council's work session yesterday, and I will watch that because that's been a real issue for our organization. What's the right place to land there? So thank you.
Great, thank you, and I'd love to get your feedback on that once you've had a chance to review it. Appreciate it. Maggie, he's already testified. You go ahead.
Well, I guess you're concerned about federal and state regulations when it comes to guards on garbage trucks, but you're not concerned about federal and state regulations or human rights regulations when it comes to shelters, which is why people end up in, sleeping on the street because of being kicked out because
Maggie, you're off topic, and
I'm
if you
on
cannot get
topic.
back on topic,
I'm
I'm going to ask you
talking
to sit
about
down.
federal and state regulations and UN regulations. I think that's what you were talking about, Ted, about your concern that things fit into federal and state regulations while you turn a blind eye when it's the shelters. Why? Why
Maggie, do you
the
see all
double
the
standard?
people?
Why the
You're
double
wasting a
standard?
lot of people's time. You're wasting a lot of people's time. Please take your seat. Please take your seat. I'm asking you to take your seat. If you do not do so, you'll be asked to leave. Carla, we'll take a 2-minute recess. right, folks, so it is an age-old tradition in the United States to engage in acts of civil disobedience. People certainly have every right to engage in acts of civil disobedience, but the flip side of that is I have the right to enforce the council rules of order and decorum, which are stated very clearly at the beginning of each council session. So I took the opportunity to enforce those rules, and I know Maggie, and I know she'll be back, and we'll look forward to seeing her return on a different day. So we have completed public testimony. Carla, is that correct?
Yes, that was all who signed up.
Very good. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance, and it moves to second reading. Next item is item number 14, please.
Amend Motor Vehicle Fuels Code to move authority to establish, revise as necessary, and enforce standards for biofuels sold in the city to the Director of the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability.
Colleagues, this is a second reading, so we've already heard a presentation and public testimony on this item. Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Hardesty? No. Very good. Carla, please call the roll.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Item number 15.
Award a price agreement to Rapid Response BioCleaning LLC for campsite cleanup services for $4,528,000 annually over a 5-year period.
And colleagues, people have been nice enough to inform me that there probably will be a civil disobedience during this presentation. I have a request. Hear the presentation first, because I will continue to enforce the rules, and there's people in this chamber who I really would like to hear the full conversation and the full discussion. So with that, colleagues, I think everybody here understands that homelessness is a humanitarian Mr. Walsh, you're out of order. If you do not stop, we'll ask you to leave. We'll take a 5-minute recess.
You have the option.
Back in session. Here we are again. Item 14, Commissioner Fritz had to step out for one moment. She'd like to cast her vote, so if we could suspend item 15 for just a moment while we give Commissioner Fritz the opportunity to cast her vote. Carla?
Fritz.
Aye. Thank you.
Very good. And that ordinance has now passed with all four of us present. So I was in my very early introductory remarks on item number 15. Homelessness in Portland, I'm sure we all agree, is a humanitarian crisis. I think we can also agree that camp cleanups are difficult, but necessary work to sustain and improve the safety and livability of our city. We've learned that we need our vendors not just to focus on the security or enforcement, but to lead with compassion and interact with people in a manner consistent with trauma-informed principles. So in order to continue this important work in our community, we need to update our service contracts. This is an opportunity to contractually obligate that our vendors share our values and interact with people living on our streets with compassion, professionalism, and courtesy. Over the past several years, we learned that proper training is essential to the work of camp cleanups. With these changes, we're requiring that our contractors are trained in nonviolent de-escalation tactics, assertive engagement with neurodiverse individuals, CPR, and proper use of Narcan to treat individuals who've overdosed on opioids. We've also learned that lived experience is a highly valuable skill that cannot be taught. The staff of Rapid Response can offer us these intangibles. 63% of their employees have experienced the criminal justice system firsthand. 59% have experienced homelessness firsthand. And 57% are in or have been in drug recovery programs. Further, these contract changes stipulate that our camp cleanup vendors assist our outreach providers during a severe weather event, thereby expanding our resources to reduce the impact of exposure. The goal is that by requiring proper training and qualified mental health associates and peer support specialists, there will be fewer negative interactions between our vendors and folks living outside. This price agreement reflects the increased service levels required per our intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Department of Transportation to clean throughout the city and do so in a values-driven manner. I believe that we can address the most problematic campsites, those that create a public health, an environmental, or a public safety threat, either to the community at large or those within the camps themselves, and do so in a thoughtful and humane manner. And that is the contract that we are bringing forth today. And so with that, I will turn it over to the team. I believe Teresa Green is up first. Good morning, and thank you for being here.
Good morning. My name is...
You can move the mic closer.
Yeah, mics move around, and if you could all, just when you speak, identify yourselves for the record, that'd be helpful.
Good morning. My name is Teresa Green. I'm the Procurement Supervisor of Procurement Services on the services team. I conducted the RFP for the campsite cleanups, and I was also the buyer. I oversaw the...
A little closer, please.
Sorry about that. So I was working very closely with the project manager on the needs of the program based on the new requirements of our IGA with ODOT. I listened very intently to the concerns of council when Lucas first presented his ordinance. That council presentation, along with your comments, were gleaned for those actual concerns. Each and every one of you provided very valuable input. Those were relayed over to the scope of work, which will also be relayed over to the actual contract that we hope to have executed today.
Thank you. Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you for that. Could you tell us what is different between the old contract and the new contract as far as the scope of work is concerned?
Of course. I know that Lucas is going to speak a little more to this later on, but initially, from a procurement standpoint, whenever something new comes into the contract, we do our best to try to incorporate it or the urgent needs into an existing scope of work that we have right now. But for this particular solicitation, we actually had to go back out because the scope changes were so large. We do have an agreement with ODOT, and the requirements included things that included increased insurance requirements from the original contract, and that's definitely something that will impact any proposer's finances when they have to prepare for such an increase in the commercial general liability requirements, in addition to carrying of the Narcan, the requirement for the qualified mental health professional that we'd like to have go out and do some outreach in the field. There's also that training piece. We'd definitely like to see that qualified individual actually provide the training to actually all the members of the crews that are going to be working in the field, so it will be an ongoing service that will be provided. There were just general enhancements all around to actually better serve the needs of the individuals whom we are impacting.
I think that's been one of the misperceptions, is that we're basically renewing the old contract that people had a lot of concerns about. And so the more we can talk about the difference between what we did before and what our vision is for the future, I think the better it's going to be for public understanding. So thank you for that.
Okay. Good morning. Scott Schneider from Procurement Services. I'll just give you a quick recap of the CPO's report, and then I'll turn it over to Lucas and Johnny to
CPO.
the Chief Procurement Officer's report. And then I'll turn it over to Lucas and Johnny for more information on the scope. You have before you this morning the Chief Procurement Officer's report to Council, recommending the award of a price agreement for campsite cleanup services for a not-to-exceed amount of $4,528,000 per year. On July 16th, 2019, the Chief Procurement Officer advertised RFP number 1288, and on August 12th, 5 proposals were received. All 5 proposals were deemed responsive to the requirements of the solicitation. Following a review by an evaluation committee, the city issued a notice of intent to award the price agreement to Rapid Response BioClean LLC on September 17th. 1 protest was received and was resolved. Rapid Response BioCleaning has a current City of Portland business tax account and is in compliance with the city's contracting requirements. There are no subcontractors on this contract. Based on the historical spend for these services, the confidence level for this procurement is high. If council has any questions about the solicitation process, Teresa and I can answer those, and otherwise we'll turn it over to Lucas and Johnny for more information on the scope.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Lucas Hillier, and I am the manager of the city's homelessness and urban camping impact
Lucas,
reduction
could
program.
you slide that just a little bit closer? Thank you.
I always get, when I hear my voice.
Okay. Yeah, it's
I want to thank you for the opportunity today to come talk about the very challenging work Huckerb does on behalf of the city of Portland. I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan so he can present an overview of the work that we do.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners.
Morning.
My name is Jonathan Lewis, and I'm a program coordinator with the Homelessness and Urban Camping Impact Reduction Program, or HUCCRP by our better-known acronym. But we are the group responsible for administering the one point of contact campsite reporting system. Today, I'm going to provide an overview of one point of contact, and I will also showcase our report forms, discuss our assessment process, and also our posting criteria for campsite cleanups. As a program, we are committed to addressing the camps that pose the greatest risk to public health and safety. That's where we send our resources first and foremost. One point of contact is designed to better identify where those camps exist, and we do this through our partnership with the community. One point of contact is a system that provides one single place to report issues of camping or garbage. It's intended to simplify the process of reporting, and there are 3 ways that individuals can submit reports. And they can use our campsite report form, PDX reporter, or they can call City County Information and Referral, and an information and referral specialist will take a report for them over the phone. Individuals need only pick one. HUCRP, our group, a team of 3, we receive anywhere from 800 to 1,200 reports a week surrounding issues of homelessness. This is our campsite report form for folks that are not familiar. PDX Reporter is the other web form folks can access online. When reporting, the most important piece of information that we need is really a location. Please note it is not necessary to submit multiple reports in one day. Generally speaking, submitting a new report once or twice a week is appropriate and in fact helpful for us as we work with our partners to help address the issue. So what happens after you submit a campsite report? This very detailed flow chart can be found on our website for folks that are interested in reading the fine print. But typically, our first responder is a group called Clean Start. Clean Start is a homeless to work program through Central City Concern. They respond by going to the reported location and conducting an assessment on behalf of the city. If the report is just garbage and not an active camp, they will pick up the garbage, send us back a report, and move on to the next location. If they find it is an active campsite, then they will engage with the individuals that are there. They will pick up camper-identified garbage. They'll pass out trash bags to assist folks in keeping their area clean. And then they'll take pictures of the site, and they'll send us back an assessment as to what they found. The assessment they send us is based off of criteria we have given them, which I will discuss in the next slide. And we use that to triage the many hundreds of requests for cleanup we get every week. This is a list of our primary posting criteria we use whenever making a determination to post a campsite. This list and our matrix has been vetted through several community work groups, including a Home for Everyone's Safety Off the Streets. Assessment criteria includes, but is not limited to, conspicuous drug use, the amount of trash, ADA access restrictions, environmental impact. Is it next to a school, a park, a private residence? Are there reports of violence or crime? If a site meets a certain threshold, then we will post it for cleanup. In the next few slides, I will showcase examples of sites that have been posted for cleanup. But before that, I want to explain what a post actually means. A post refers to the written notification that we are required to give folks who are camping in any given area before we can remove any personal property that may be there. Previously, our posting time frame was 24 hours to 7 days. But with our new intergovernmental agreement with ODOT, the Oregon Department of Transportation, the new posting timeframe throughout the city is now 48 hours to 10 days. Once a site gets posted for cleanup, outreach workers are notified so that they might have an opportunity to engage with folks that are present at the site before we come back to remove any personal property that may be left behind. I do want to be clear with folks that simply reporting a site does not mean the city will be going to immediately remove that camp. There's a process that we follow in order to protect all individuals involved. It is our intent to be as transparent as possible with everyone in the community, both housed and unhoused, so that folks know what we are doing and when. In January through June of 2019, 15% of all sites assessed by Clean Start were posted for cleanup. That means out of all the sites Clean Start went to assess, only 15% met our posting thresholds and were actually posted. Rapid response completes anywhere from 30 to 50 posted cleanups a week. During winter months, when severe weather is declared by the county, we do not remove personal property and we do not ask people to move. We want folks to get to a warming shelter and not to have to worry about their personal belongings. This site is an example of one posted location. This area was posted as it met several criteria, including, but not limited to, the amount of trash. There were ADA accessibility issues. There's evidence of conspicuous drug use, in addition to some other factors. This site is an example of another location. This area, again, met several criteria, including but not limited to some environmental concerns, burning of some hazardous materials. There was a large amount of trash, also evidence of conspicuous drug use, and the camp was also rather large. Here is a third and final example of a posted site that also met our criteria, including but not limited to the amount of trash that was present. There were environmental concerns, and this particular area is posted no trespassing.
Can I show you some pictures of really nice camps?
Please let him
Actually,
finish his
my-
presentation.
My next slide actually does show areas of town where our posting criteria was not met. These are 3 different locations. Each picture is a different spot. So this, again, is an example where posting criteria is not met, but impact reduction services continue. By impact reduction services, I mean primarily through the use of Clean Start. We will continue to pick up trash, engage with the campers, and offer resources. Personal property collected from cleanups is stored for up to 30 days in our storage facility. This is a picture from inside our storage warehouse. Our warehouse is in inner southeast Portland near the Orange Max line. We do now have expanded hours of operations, so folks can come to reclaim their property free of charge. So to recap quickly, folks can file a report using any one of the 3 methods identified. They can use our campsite report form, PDX reporter, or city county information and referral. Clean Start gets dispatched to do an assessment, pick up garbage, and engage with the folks that are there. Hucker reviews the incident and report sent back from Clean Start. If the site does not meet criteria for posting, we will continue to monitor the situation through the use of continued reports, and we will focus on those impact reduction efforts, working with partners as able. If the site meets the criteria for posting, we will put it on our list to post and triage that posting and cleanup with sites already in the queue. We notify social services and then begin coordinating with our internal and external partners. Then, at least 48 hours after the notice gets posted to folks informing them of a pending cleanup, city contracted vendors come back to remove whatever is left behind. Property is stored in our storage warehouse in inner southeast Portland along the Orange Max line, and folks can come to reclaim their property within 30 days of its removal free of charge. We coordinate closely with service providers, but we also are strategizing new ways of engaging with an extremely vulnerable and highly marginalized population. Part of that strategy involves a group called the Navigation Team. This is a group of highly specialized outreach workers who work specifically at high-impact encampments and meet with folks where they're at. Once they have had an opportunity to engage and work with everyone present, they notify us and we post the site for cleanup. Here are some of the outcomes of their work. We have captured here data from 8 sites they have worked at. They are currently wrapping up work at their 9th site now, and we expect these figures to grow substantially from that work. Here are some of our performance measures.
Could you go back and please give us a few more sentences on that? Because I think the work of the outreach teams is critically important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this number, particularly at the top, the number of individuals engaged, 443 people, I think is absolutely amazing. These guys, they go to areas that we have identified as being high impact, and they work for a temporary but unspecified amount of time. And in that time, they really are working with folks to figure out what exactly they need. So for some, it's glasses. Others, it's a birth certificate. I mean, it could be any number of things. But really, the idea is to help them navigate resources and to have better access to services.
Sometimes I think you sell yourself short. And I'm enjoying the presentation, but I just have to note here, you're helping people get IDs.
Yeah.
You're helping people get into treatment. You're helping them get into housing and to permanent supportive housing. You're helping get people into shelter if they want to get into shelter. And you're helping, I certainly appreciate the fact that you're helping people get basic things like eyeglasses and connecting them to the Oregon Health Plan.
Yes.
So this to me is important to highlight because it's part of the compassionate response.
Yes, and thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Yes, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you. On that same note, I'm curious, what is the percentage of cleanups that take place as compared to sweeps that actually move people, right? So if you're thinking about you do X number total, right, of cleanups, how many of them actually end up displacing people who are houseless? Do you know, like, can you tell me what the percentage is or what the real numbers are?
So our group doesn't engage in sweeps. We do specifically, we call them campsite cleanups. And when folks are given notice, to me, a sweep means that folks are coming at any time and they're not given any notice or anything like that.
But let
which
me
is what we do.
reframe. Let
Sure.
me rephrase my question. And so there are cases where, because of the trash garbage collection, you send a team out to actually clean up and assist folks who are living there with cleaning up the site. Is that accurate?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, could you repeat that?
I'm sorry.
I apologize.
That's okay. It is my belief that based on the calls that direct your team to go out, that there are places that you go, you're being called because neighbors are complaining about the mess that has accumulated. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, essentially, folks are filing a report about an issue for any reason. It could be because there's a mess. It could simply be because people are there. And that's why we have Clean Start Go to assess the site before we do anything after that.
And so the information I'm trying to get from you is, out of all the calls you get,
Yeah.
there's a percentage that are just about giving people the tools to keep their site clean, right? There's a percentage that you're working with this navigation team to help them get IDs and to figure out how to troubleshoot whatever the issues are that can help them be more stable, right? But there's a percentage that there's actually a posting that happens that actually requires within 48 hours or 10 days, right, which is being proposed now, that this site is cleaned up. My question, my original question continues to be,
Yeah.
what's the percentage based on all the cleanups, based on all the interactions? What are the percentages that are posted and required for people to be displaced from that location?
We found that January through June, 15% of all sites assessed ended up being posted. So just 15%.
Thank you. That is very helpful. I agree with the mayor that I think the work that's been done to actually get better at a more humane and just approach is really impressive. And I think that, I mean, there's some people that work for the city that come in and pat themselves on the back about how great they're doing, and I don't think that they're that great. You guys come in and you like undersell yourself, and I think that a lot of what you've learned through this process has been incorporated in this new RFP. So thank you for those answers.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Like pulling teeth.
Appreciate your patience. So this is our group's performance measures. Folks can find this also on our website in more detail for those that are interested. Our group is not designed to solve homelessness. We're about public space management, but public space management that serves to meet the needs of everyone within our community. We walk a fine line between balancing the needs of a very vulnerable population and managing our public spaces in such a way that is acceptable to all community members. Simply submitting a report to one point of contact does not equal removal, but it does help to ensure that someone will have eyes on the issue to help address what is happening there. Thank you for having me here. I'm going to turn it back over to Lucas.
Thanks, Johnny.
Thank you, Johnny. That was great. And again, my name is Lucas Hillier, and I manage this homelessness and camping impact reduction program. I've been working in the city to improve the way that this program operates since 2016. You have to pardon my voice. I've been talking a lot over the last 2 weeks, as you can imagine. Over the last 4 years, through trial and error and extensive community outreach and engagement and many late nights, HUCRP has developed a tiered intervention approach to meet both our objectives and further reduce the traumatization of one of Portland's most vulnerable populations. As the mayor stated earlier, we have learned that an organization who is willing to do this work needs to hire, support, and retain individuals who share life experiences with those living outside on Portland's streets today. We have found this in Rapid Response BioClean, and this price agreement now allows us to require trainings to match that rich lived experience with evidence-based engagement modalities. An example of which we will require certification from the Crisis Prevention Institute in nonviolent de-escalation. We will require ongoing trainings in assertive engagement with neurodiverse individuals, as well as CPR certification and how to properly administer naloxone. Other new components of this statement of work in this price agreement include severe weather duties, which was talked about earlier, which require teams to cease cleanup and removal and shift to assisting outreach teams in welfare checks, distributing blankets, hand warmers, and to even help with transportation to emergency warming shelters. Historically, this organization has done that because we've asked them, and now this is a contractual requirement. We have also articulated clear instructions about what property needs to be stored and have greatly improved the property retrieval process with the goal of making it easier for folks to get their stuff back. The contractor will also need to make...
Excuse me, Lucas, sorry to interrupt you. I know you're on a roll there. This is an area that I know a lot of community members are very, very concerned about when you are deciding what to store and what is not storable. What's the difference between this new contract and the previous contract as it relates to how you collect, label, and store community members' belongings in this process?
Thank you for the question. The previous contract was based on language in the Anderson Settlement Agreement, and that language was very squishy and very ambiguous. It stated that all items reasonably recognizable to be of utility and/or apparent value needed to be stored. The way that this program operated, when I first got here, the goal was to store as little as possible. So after going out into the field, I saw property being thrown away that was nicely packed, right, under a tarp, but because it was wet, the decision was made that we're not going to store it. So working with the city attorney's office and the Oregon Law Center, we came up with a couple different lists of things that under no circumstance can we ever throw away unless they are literally dripping bio-waste, right? And then there's a list of things that under no circumstance can we store, things like propane tanks or combustibles or drugs or anything like that. Illegal, yeah. Yeah. And so those two lists are now part of this contract. We've developed a system to make it more efficient in the field. So when a crew comes to a camp, we have learned that the amount of time they're there doing the inventory can create safety concerns. So while crews are in the field, we have a different colored bag system. So a clear plastic bag is for anything that could possibly be property, and a black garbage bag is for stuff that is clear garbage, candy wrappers and stuff. That stuff gets scooped up, loaded into the truck, and taken to our storage facility, where there's 3 full-time employees who spend 8 hours a day going through everything. Everything that we put our hands on has a picture of it, and it gets loaded into a spreadsheet. For sake of our due diligence to make sure that we're giving property back to the rightful owner, we ask folks to provide the location and the date of where their stuff was collected. Since we moved into the Southeast Portland location, we have about 4 to 6 property retrieval appointments a day. Historically, folks would have to get on the 12 bus and go almost all the way to Tigard. We would have maybe 1 or 2 appointments scheduled per month, and half of those people would actually show up. So it was clear to us that this wasn't working for anybody. And so with council's approval, we were able to enter into a lease with a very big warehouse. We are now making the onus on us to try to make it as easy as possible for people to get their stuff back. Yep. The contractor will also need to make, in this new statement of work, a qualified mental health associate available for crews in the field in emergency crisis situations, as well as conduct ongoing trainings for staff. And I believe the individual that Rapid Response is working with has also agreed to assist their staff in obtaining their peer support specialist certifications from the state of Oregon. I want to acknowledge the burden and the hardship this work can have on unsheltered Portlanders. No contract can eliminate all of those hardships, but this price agreement, statement of work, and the requirements therein point us in a direction to greatly reduce those hardships and negative interactions.
Thank you, Lucas. Appreciate it. And I understand you have some invited testimony, is that correct?
That's
I'm
that's
just
news
looking
to
at
me.
my
Yeah,
run of
no,
show. Okay,
I'm
very
not
good. Does
aware.
that complete your presentation?
It does.
Very good. Thank you. All colleagues, questions? I just want to express my thanks to all of you. And I believe that this contract has shown tremendous evolution and thoughtfulness relative to the original contract. And I want to thank you for that hard work. This is a report. I'll entertain a motion.
I move acceptance of the report.
Second.
Any further discussion? Carla, please call the roll.
Fritz?
I agree with the mayor that this is necessary and also appreciative of the work that you've all done. This does address many of the concerns that I've been hearing over the past several years. And we will be getting frequent updates on how this is going. And of course, we'll hear from our constituents if it doesn't go as well as we hope. So I appreciated, Lucas, not only your work over 4 years, but also your recognition that it's going to be continually improve the process. And also the statistics that we were given today showing only 15% are actually addressed. So that should set expectations from community members inside and out that there's still going to be a lot of people living outside that will need our help. Aye.
Hardesty?
I also greatly appreciate the hard work. Lucas, I think you would agree that I kind of put you through the ringer last week because it was really important that I understood why this proposal at this time. I want to make sure that for the record, the public knows that the plan is that you will have to come back to the city council before there is any extension of this contract, that we will have community conversations with frontline community members to make sure that their feedback is incorporated into whatever the next steps are, and that number 3, that we will have a city council work session with invited testimony before any additional contracting is done with this one contract. I want to also encourage the folks that are working on the street to actually really engage with those community members who are frontline workers with houseless community members and help develop opportunities for them to be employed, to be able to help with these cleanups as well. Right? I think what you've done, Lucas, has been pretty phenomenal, and I'm very grateful to your heart and your compassion around this issue, right? It's rare that we get to wear our heart on our sleeve in the kind of work that we do, because this kind of work, you can't make anybody 100% happy. But I am confident that we have the right people leading this program with the right kind of heart. But I will also make sure that we're held to the commitments that we agreed to in order to move this contract forward. So I vote aye.
Daly?
Well, I want to thank our community partners, especially Street Roots, for bringing their concerns to our attention and for being patient with us as we work to improve and move this work forward. I've been working on homelessness issues since I first arrived in City Hall 3 years ago, and my office facilitated multiple meetings between community advocates, the mayor's office, and HUCRP. working together, we made many improvements to the old contract, including a process that prioritizes health and safety concerns for cleanups and deprioritizes low-impact camps. Weekly phone calls with resource providers to coordinate the needs of people in camps that are scheduled for cleaning, earlier notices to camps to help people prepare in the event they have to move, and the end of the use of prison labor to clean the camps. I'm also very pleased that we struck the agreement with ODOT, who had not adopted our new policies, and we couldn't expect the public to distinguish between the city and ODOT, and what they saw was people continuing to do the things that we said we weren't going to do anymore. So thank you for that. We now have a much more humane approach and have greatly minimized cleanups that require people to move, as we learned today, just 15% of the sites. However, the biggest challenge in my mind remains, and that is that if we are requiring people to move, I believe we have to have somewhere for them to go. We have to offer an alternative site or a shelter bed to anyone being moved against their will. And I haven't given up on that, although we haven't achieved that. My office through PBOT recently permitted a new volunteer overnight hygiene center in the Central East Side, and we are actively analyzing PBOT right-of-way to identify safe sleeping spaces that will give people living outside another option to avoid being moved against their will. I'll continue to push this work and to use all the resources available to me. I want to thank Lucas Hillier and his team. You guys have been amazing to work with and always very open to our feedback and willing to collaborate, and I deeply appreciate that. The program is constantly learning, growing, and improving. I also want to thank Jamie Duhamel from my office for her work on this item, and just appreciate my colleagues for finding a way to move forward on this. I definitely support the short-term contract and the promise that we are going to do deep community engagement to make it even better. I look forward to being an active partner, and I vote aye.
Wheeler.
I want to hone in on something Lucas said during his presentation. This is not our strategy to end homelessness. This is about public space remediation. And there are some sites that provide a very real threat to public health, to the environment, and to public safety. And as what I hope people understand, having heard the presentation, is this is done with compassion. It's done by people who have the lived experience, who understand the conditions of people who live on our streets. And it's done in a manner to connect people with whatever services they need to get off and stay off the streets and be successful. I believe it's a good, excuse me, you're going to have to sit down or I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Excuse me, listen. There, realistically, given the number of sites, there will always be improvements that we can make and we should make, but I think you've struck an excellent balance here. And I want to appreciate the hard work you've put into it. And we will continue to work on our primary strategies, which are compassionate and effective to address homelessness, whether it's prevention. Last year, through the Joint Office and a Home for Everyone, 7,000 people received prevention services in this community, people who are at high risk of becoming homelessness. Last year, over 6,000 people were moved either from the streets or from shelter into housing. 35,000 people in this community received other services, whether it was prevention, shelter, access to services, or transitioned into housing. And we're working with both our state and our county partners on connecting people who need addiction treatment or mental health services. We work with nonprofit organizations to connect people with domestic violence survivorship services. We work with providers around youth needs and youth services, and we work with our school districts. We work through the Housing Bureau on affordable housing. So there's many things that we are doing, and I want to acknowledge something Commissioner Fish might have mentioned if he were here today, which is we have pursued a very aggressive set of goals around permanent supportive housing to address those who are chronically homeless, those who have the greatest health needs, to help them get off the street. We committed to 2,000 units of permanent supportive housing in this community over 10 years, but we're being far more aggressive than that. In year one, we've either identified or created over 850 new units of permanent supportive housing. So this is a part of a much larger strategy to address this humanitarian crisis on our streets. And I want to thank you for the great work that you and your team are doing. We appreciate it. I vote aye. The report is accepted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And as a manager, I would not be a good manager if I didn't thank my team, Jonathan and Katie Lindsay, who's on maternity leave right now. So thank you for the opportunity to talk about this, and I appreciate your.
And Lucas, while you're at it, I forgot to mention Seraphy Allen on my team. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Seraphy and the hard work that she's done, and all of you have done on this as well. Thank you. And I want to thank my colleagues as well. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item, Carla, is item number 16 on the regular agenda.
Grant a 10-year franchise to Verizon Wireless LLC, DBA Verizon Wireless, for wireless communication services in the city.
So this is a second reading. We have, excuse me, if you're going to keep interrupting, I'm going to ask you to leave. This is a second reading of a non-emergency ordinance. We've already had a presentation and we've heard public testimony on this item. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Fritz.
Aye.
Hardesty.
Nay.
Udaly.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted.
Wait,
Next
Mayor.
item, number 17.
Mayor, excuse me. That is an ordinance to grant a franchise, so it would require 4 votes.
Oh, I apologize. You know what? I didn't mean to call the roll. I take it back. I'm pulling this back to my office. I should have read my notes.
Without objection.
Without objection. Does anybody object? I see no objections. Thank you. Sorry about that, Robert. I got ahead of myself. Next item, item number 17.
Amend a contract with Parametrics, Inc. for professional engineering services for the Lombard Pump Station upgrade and force main replacement project number E10920 in the amount of $691,373.
Colleagues, these are items that I'm bringing on behalf of Commissioner Fish. Colleagues, this project will allow the Bureau to upgrade the Leonard Pump Station, which is deteriorating due to age, and it's not seismically fit. This contract amendment is needed because in addition to the pump station upgrade, about a mile of force main sewer pipe, which sends wastewater from the pump station to the Columbia Wastewater Treatment Plant, needs to be upgraded. Here today to give a brief presentation are Paul Suto, Engineering Manager, and Aaron Lawler, who's the engineer. Both gentlemen are from Environmental Services. Thank you both for being here today.
Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. I'm Paul Suto. Sorry. Is that better?
Paula, just slide it a little closer.
Okay. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Paul Suto, Engineering Manager with BES, and Aaron's going to lead the presentation, and I'll be here to help answer questions.
Good afternoon, Council. I'm Aaron Lawler, engineer with Bureau of Environmental Services in the Treatment and Pumping Systems Division. We are here today to request an authorization of a PT amendment with Parametrics, Inc. for the Lombard Pump Station and force main upgrade. This is the second time that this project has been to council before, so you may remember some of the slides that I will show. The first time was in March of 2018 to authorize the initial contract with Parametrics. An amendment to the original contract is required based on information gained during the condition assessment of the site and the force main. Just a little footnote, this picture here, we'll talk about it a little bit more, but that is part of the force main that we are now going to repair. That is a man welding right after we had a break in the force main, so it's an emergency repair. This project was initiated to provide standard upgrade to the Lombard Pump Station. The pump station and force main was constructed in 1983. The electrical, mechanical equipment have reached the end of its useful design life. and they require replacement. We're doing some additional upgrades to the site as well, including installation of standby power generator to increase reliability, as well as structural and seismic upgrades to the existing infrastructure to meet current code requirements and increase resiliency. The initial project scope included 2 investigations during the pre-design phase to gain more information and better understand some of the project requirements. These were a geotechnical investigation into the soil conditions at the pump station, as well as a condition assessment of the force main, which is a pressurized sewage pipe that the pump station discharges into. The results of these assessments have indicated additional work that is required to successfully complete this project. These include ground improvements and full replacement of the force main. This amendment incorporates these additional tasks into the engineering design contract. Here I have some just reference point for you of where Lombard Pump Station is compared to the wastewater treatment plant on Columbia Boulevard. It's located in North Portland near the Port of Portland terminals, and it's adjacent to the Columbia Slough. A couple aerial photos and an on-the-ground photo of the existing pump station. As you can see, it's very close to the slough. There's a rail yard right there that often prevents access to the site. It's part of the reason why we're providing standby power. So this is the new portion of work as part of the amendment. The results of the investigation conducted during the pre-design has shown that this nearly 1 mile long force main has begun to fail. In December of 2017, the force main actually had a localized failure. I showed that picture a little earlier. And the result of the condition assessment of the force main recommended replacement. During this assessment, we also determined that the current force main is actually oversized. So this replacement provides the opportunity to install a smaller force main, and with that, we're able to slip line this existing force main with a new one. So we're basically going to be threading a new pipe through the existing pipe. So a little bit of project background. The project was advertised for competitive selection in 2017. The project was awarded to Parametrics based off of qualifications, and we came to a negotiated contract fee that was approved by council of $959,746.
Commissioner Hurst, do you
Yes.
have a question?
What did the thank you, Mayor. What did you tell the council when you bought that original contract for approval?
That
what was the scope of work that we were contracting for?
Yeah, so it was for design services, engineering services for the pre-design, design, construction phases of the pump station upgrade. And during, in the scope of the pre-design included the geotechnical investigations and the condition assessment of the force main.
And what was your level of confidence in your assessment when you did that initial proposal?
Yeah, so I may talk about this again a little bit later, but when we came, the contract fee was negotiated and firm, but the overall scope of the construction and the project itself was low, and that was presented to council. I actually believe you asked me why was it low, and I explained that that's a kind of a description that council requires based off of the unknowns associated with the project, which was soil conditions and the force main condition.
So as you can understand, when I see 72.3% increase in a proposal, that raises a lot of warning signs, right?
Absolutely.
Is that normal for you to increase a proposal by 72.3%?
I would say it's not normal. No, it's there. I think you'll hear from a presentation after us about getting a condition assessment program going. But a lot of the assets that we have in the city, we've built and we haven't checked back on until it becomes time to do a major upgrade. So when we lay eyes on them, we learn a lot about that.
And then my last question, because I know you've got some more formal. It says that 35.72% of this contract will go to disadvantaged minority women and emerging small businesses, and I need that broken out, disaggregated. What's going to minority firms? What's going to women? I need the whole list.
Yeah, I have that. Would you like that now or when I get to that slide?
Whatever's convenient for you.
Yeah, okay, I have a slide a little bit later.
Wanted to put it on the list.
Yes, thank you. So, jumping back to the project status, so we are still currently in pre-design. We've done nearly 30% design of the pump station. All work completed to date has been in the original scope of the project, so none of the work has been out of scope. But we were aware that these assessments could throw us in a little bit of a wrench, and so this is kind of a hard stop point to come back and explain what we found and ask for this amendment to do work that is not currently in scope. So yeah, this is the force main. That is a picture of the repair after it was completed, but you can see it was significantly damaged during that break. So these findings are a significant amount of works, and they could not have been incorporated into the existing negotiated contract. So we began negotiating an amendment, and that is why we're here today. And it will cover replacement of the existing force main and soil improvements for seismic resiliency at the pump station. So, Commissioner Hardesty, I think this will be where I will address those questions. So this is an overall breakdown of the contract, the amendment, and the total project cost. That would be through construction completion. Again, this level of confidence of this estimate is low, and that is based off of the City of Portland's project estimate confidence level rating index, basically because we're in pre-design.
So I'm sorry, so even now, coming back with this increase, your confidence in this is low?
Yes, based off of where we are in the project, again, I would say we are more certain now than we were when we came the first time because we do have more information, but to move up to a moderate or a high, you have to be further along in the overall design based off of the index.
Want to add something?
Yeah, I want to just hopefully maybe clarify something. So I think the confidence is pretty high in the contract amendment that we're adding to 691. It's low in that 11.194, which the contract amendment is a portion of that. And as Aaron was, I think, attempting to explain, we're only at that early design stage. So as we progress to design, we get more confident because we actually have something tangible to compare. Right now, we're kind of using other project ballpark numbers to estimate, and that's typically, it doesn't give us a lot of confidence in our project estimating.
What will be refined as we move forward would be the construction contract, the construction cost estimate, which is the majority of that figure that you see there. We'll have more detailed design to do better quantity takeoffs. So as you can see here, we have disadvantaged, minority-owned, woman-owned, and emerging small business participation of 35.7%. I did do a breakdown. However, it's a little bit difficult because many of the firms that are in this program, they subscribe to a number of those different titles within the program. So I was able to say that 66% of that participation is associated with disadvantaged and minority owned businesses. 8% is attributed to emerging small businesses or women-owned businesses, and 26% is kind of what I grouped as they subscribe to all of the DMW ESB titles.
So they're disadvantaged, they're women's business, they're minority, as well as an emerging small business, is what you're saying?
That's what
6% of
yes.
those firms?
Yes, that's what they qualify for.
Thank you.
And so we estimate at this,
And to be clear, that's 26% of the 35.
of the 35, and I do have the dollar breakdowns if you'd like.
Okay.
I would love to see that list at some time, at some point.
Yes, we-
Actually, the firms themselves, because
Yep.
the way we calculate folks sometimes is not as accurate as I'd like to see it.
Absolutely, yeah, we can provide that. So estimated project completion is June of 2023. So that pretty much concludes our presentation. Just to summarize, we're here for the authorization to execute an amendment with parametrics for engineering services in the amount of $691,372.90.
Great. Thank you. Any further questions? Carla, is there any public testimony on this item?
Not sure if they're still here. Lightning and Maggie had signed up.
Nope, I don't see them. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. This moves to second reading. Thank
Thank
you
you.
both.
You're welcome.
Good
Thank you so
presentation.
much.
That was
Appreciate it.
helpful. Next item is item number 18.
Authorize a contract with Jacobs Engineering Group, Inc. for professional services for the collection system main force evaluation project for $4,498,823.
Colleagues, as you know, Environmental Services manages both our stormwater and our sewer infrastructure. That includes about 2,500 miles of sewer pipe that transports wastewater to the city's wastewater treatment plant on Columbia Boulevard. Most of those pipes rely on gravity, but about 56 miles of the pipes are force mains, and we just discussed one. They are pressurized pipes that move wastewater and stormwater uphill towards the treatment plant. This ordinance would authorize Environmental Services to assess and analyze the condition and reliability of the city's force mains. Jeremiah Hess and Molly Nose McCord from the Environmental Services Bureau will tell us a little bit more about this. Jeremiah and Molly, thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Good
I'm
afternoon
Jeremiah.
now.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Jeremiah. To my left is Molly. I'd like to thank Paul for setting us up.
Yeah, he did. Absolutely. It was a good primer.
As the mayor mentioned, we have about 56 miles of force mains in the city that are used to convey wastewater from pump stations at lower elevations to higher elevations. The majority of them are 60 to 80 years old and have never been formally assessed for their condition. A lot of these have a high consequence of failure, such as crossing highways, freeways, railroads, environmental areas, rivers, and that also can, failure could also result in a basement backup. I mentioned that no formal or comprehensive assessment of the condition of the system has been performed, and that's what this contract is going to authorize.
What's in the photograph? What is that?
Yeah, so that is the picture of a tool being inserted into a force main at a pump station.
To do what? What's it do?
It's going to inspect the pipe for metal thickness measurements. It uses electromagnetics.
Ah, so those are like the nodes on the end of those?
That's right. There's sensors on the end of those yellow wands that use electromagnetics to scan the pipe wall and determine the metal thickness. And it's looking for, obviously, wall loss there, so like due to corrosion or something, which would be premature failure.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's a good segue into the next bullet there is there's a lot of challenging logistics associated with these assessments, such as operational constraints. Most of these pipes can't be easily shut down for long periods of time because wastewater keeps flowing and we have to maintain service. For example, there's currently a pump station that's been out of service for approximately 3 months due to a force main failure, so they've had to bypass around that pump station, which is challenging, requires a lot of additional daily operations and maintenance staff to maintain that system, and costs accrued there. Additionally, access is challenging. Most pipes are buried and pressurized, and they can't be assessed in the same way as the majority of the gravity system. Jacobs and their team of sub-consultants possess the sophisticated tools and associated data analysis capabilities that are typically only offered by select service providers who specialize in water and wastewater infrastructure asset management. And this project ultimately meets the Bureau's goals of protecting public health, safety, and the environment. So what we're proposing to do is create a risk-based framework for the project that we will be able to utilize within the Bureau in the future after the project is completed. So the approach is a tiered condition assessment. Basically, this is a pretty common approach in the industry in that you start in what we call a desktop analysis, and basically gathering the required information based on data, and then you progress in sophistication as far as the inspection techniques. So the desktop analysis will tell us what data we need to collect and how much, what tools and methods we can use to collect the data, what software and data systems we need to have in place to store and access and utilize the data best to our advantages, and what sort of analyses we need to perform to make the best use of the data that we're being collected and using. And then we'll progress on to these different levels of inspection based on the desktop analysis, external inspections, basically looking at the outside of the pipe, applying non-destructive examination technologies, and then doing internal inspections, which is what we showed in the previous slide with that tool being inserted, and what's being shown in this slide here, which, again, that's a little bit more challenging because of some of those constraints that I previously mentioned. So from that data information, we're going to then forecast the remaining useful life of these assets and develop informed maintenance, repair, and replacement strategies, and then establish the future funding requirements based on those proposed strategies. And that'll include capital replacements likely and O&M, but the capital hopefully is sometime out.
What is our dedicated city employee doing in the top photograph?
Yeah, so what you see in the bottom photograph is what's called a smart ball, and that's a tool that is a highly sensitive acoustic sensor. And it's not what's not shown is it's usually encased in like a foam ball that makes it buoyant, so it floats through the pipeline, potentially buoyant, so it's kind of centered. It's not rolling along the bottom of the pipeline, and it uses acoustics to gather leak and gas pocket information throughout the pipe. So that's what she is doing there, is she is inserting the smart ball into a wastewater pipe at a pump station.
Well, first of all, I don't know her, but she is a great person, a great human being for being willing to do that. That looks like very difficult work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. So the schedule is 4 years for the project. That's primarily because a lot of this work has to be done off-peak seasons and when the flows are lowest. So there's constraints there with the weather and when we can actually do the work. And we have to have time to plan for those kind of conditions as well as in terms of the inspection requirements. The budget is $4.5 million, approximately, as we mentioned, for the contract. Of that, approximately $1.6 million is dedicated to subcontracted developing minority women and emerging small business firms, which is approximately 35% of the contract. I don't have the specific breakdown.
It's on page 28. It's on page 28 of the contract.
Correct.
Yeah, so that's got the breakdown.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks. I don't have that on me, but but we can get that to you.
We've got it.
Oh, you got. Okay, great. That's about it. Of that, the funds are available in the sewer system operating fund, and at this time, no additional resources or full-time employees are required to do this work.
Very good. Colleagues, any further questions? Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. This may not be a question for you. It may be an OMF question, right? As I think about these capital projects that we start, like, so you're about to start this new capital project. You didn't say what your confidence level was and the dollar amount, or whether or not you would be coming back after some initial assessment and wanting more money or needing more money to complete the task. So I guess my first question is that it? Is it really just going to cost $4.5 million, or is that just the beginning of what it's going to cost?
At this time, our confidence level is high in that estimate because we're just here to assess. We're not here to build or fix anything. So the scope that's been.
Looking at it.
Correct. Very clear on that. So the scope that we've identified has been well-defined.
And I guess it will be an OMF question because clearly we have a lot of infrastructure needs in the city of Portland. And for me personally, I just don't know how all of these individual infrastructure projects actually fit into a big picture of what the city is doing for infrastructure improvements. It feels very piecemeal, and it feels like various bureaus have various projects where they're doing infrastructure improvements. I'm just concerned that we continue to say okay to infrastructure improvement projects without having a big picture look at where all the infrastructure improvements that we need and then doing some kind of prioritizing about what we need to do first. There's no question that we need to do this, but just as an overall statement, I'm just really concerned that we do this very piecemeal.
So that's, Commissioner, that's different for the utilities. They do have a capital improvement plan that we approve that they are then able to budget for and prioritize. So,
But again, it's like in the overall, I appreciate that. Yeah, they've got their own budget, but.
and so then our interaction with that is when we approve the rates as part of the budget.
And I can't speak for all of the bureaus, but I know with water, sewer, and even PBOT, those dollars can't be moved across bureaus. They're coming from specific sources like utility rates, payers, and highway funds. So I know we've ramped up collaboration with BES in particular, between BES and PBOT, to make sure that we're taking advantage of any kind of cost savings or time savings to minimize disruption to the public. And we're not tearing up brand-new roads. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Any further questions? Carl, any public testimony on this item?
No one else signed up?
Great, it was a great presentation.
Yes,
I appreciate it very much. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Thank you. And our next item is item number 19, and this is a second reading.
Authorize a competitive solicitation and contract with the lowest responsible bidder and provide payment for construction of the Hillsdale Crest Rainfall-Derived Project Number E10941 for an estimated cost of $5 million.
Second reading, please call the roll.
Fritz.
Aye.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Udaley.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. Ordinance is adopted. Last item is the fourth agenda item, please. Item number 19-1.
Call special elections to fill the unexpired term of Commissioner Position Number 2 on May 19, 2020, and if necessary, August 11, 2020.
Colleagues, this item sets the dates for the special election to fill the seat of Commissioner number 2, the Commissioner of Public Works. Of course, I'm talking about Commissioner Nick Fish's position. Thank you for agreeing to hear this as a 4/5 item. It was very important to Commissioner Fish that he structure and time his resignation so as not to influence in any way the process or outcome of the election. Nick believed the office he held was sacred, and he wanted the best and the brightest in our community to vigorously compete for the honor of succeeding him on this council. The charter sets parameters for filling of a vacancy, and this item was prepared by our city attorney in consultation with city, county, and state election staff. We have Tracy Reeve and Deborah Scroggin on hand to answer any questions we may have.
I have one question.
That's your cue to come on up.
I don't see Deborah. Oh,
There
hello,
she is.
Deborah.
Welcome. Thank you. Commissioner Udaley.
My single question is, I understand that the election will be held in May on the same on the regular ballot. Will the filing deadline for candidates be the same, which is March 10th?
It is the same.
Okay.
Everything else should be the exact same except for,
Yeah, I'm sorry, you have to identify yourself for the record.
Deborah Scroggin, City Elections Officer. The filing dates should all remain the same, except for it will be a shortened filing period that I expect to begin on Monday.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Fritz had a couple of questions.
Actually, I just want to clarify that the Open and Accountable Elections Program will be available for this election. That will have different timelines than the current filing, and those will be posted on the Open and Accountable Elections website today. Essentially, so the rules are the same, but the calendar is different.
Thank you.
Very good.
That's great
Commissioner
news.
Hardesty, did you have a question or a comment?
I just wanted to put on the record that about the charter, just to say that there are people that think that we should be having the runoff, if there's a runoff in July, based on the charter, and I understand that federal law actually lays out the appropriate process for this kind of election. Is that an accurate statement?
There are a number of factors that go into that. There are federal law requirements, there are state law requirements. The charter deadlines have been in the charter for a long period of time. We looked back over the last, I think this is the fourth time since starting with former Commissioner Blumenauer, who's of course now a United States Congressman. And the council in each of those instances has found it reasonably necessary to extend the time periods. One of the things that we're sort of mentally putting on our to-do list as the Charter Review Commission comes up is to look at modifying those charter dates because they're really not feasible.
Very good. And I understand overseas ballots have something to do with the date we've
In
selected
particular,
as well.
military and overseas ballots have to be mailed out 45 days prior to the election, so scheduling an election in July is not feasible.
Very good. I appreciate it. Carla, I'm not clear whether or not we take public testimony on a fourth item.
Well, it is a resolution, so
Oh, it is a resolution. Is there anybody here who would like to provide testimony on this item?
I don't know if they're still here. Diana and Edith Gillis.
Good morning.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon, yes, that's right. It is now afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Diana Gutman, and I signed up, and I honestly, I'm in support of this. I don't know what to say. I encourage the public to nominate the person that they think would fill the seat best, because this is a seat that is for public service, and Commissioner Fish was a wonderful public servant. He helped so many people. He cared about the people of Portland, and that's something that anyone who takes this seat should be aware of. He worked with the indigenous communities to help understand how we took care of our land. And I had the privilege of being at the salmon celebration over the summer, and it was a very, very special event. And I can't even begin to express how sad of a day this is. And I learned so much from Commissioner Fish, and we as a city are going to learn in this process and take what he has taught us. And I do believe that whoever comes forward will be the right person. And so my heart goes out to his family, to everyone here at City Hall, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Dinah. That was a beautiful tribute. Thank you. It's a great way to end our morning session. Carla, please call the roll.
Fritz.
So to be clear again, the Open and Accountable Elections Program will be available for candidates for this seat. There are multiple rules to that program, and so before candidates do anything, I encourage them to contact Susan Motet or Daniel Lukow and ask for a training so that you make sure that you do everything right, because the election cycle for this seat was started on January 2nd and goes through August 11th. And as I said, the timeline will be posted on the Open and Accountable, I'm getting beat. The Open and Accountable Elections
New rules.
website, which is linked from the front page of mine. Yeah, it's fitting that we're voting on this at the end of this meeting as we started at the beginning. It's a sad vote. Aye.
Hardesty,
Aye.
Udaly,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The resolution is adopted. We're adjourned.